It's a brand new month. Welcome to the first day of December, and you know how we do it. It's going to be spectacularly wonderful right here on the AM show. That's what we deliver on your morning television. My name is Benjamin Akakpo. I do this always with Bertis Abubeidu Lanta. Welcome to Thursday. Now, coming up this morning, we have a surprise for you in terms of the news. Yes, you've not seen him in a while, but yes, he is back. Pakwesi Shandorf will be serving you that. But right after that, we get into the news review, and Professor Lord Mauko Yevuga, Director and Lead Researcher at the Center for African Diplomacy and Global Engagement, that is Afro Global, and Bridget Jogbenuku join us for that review. But then from there, we quickly get into our big stories, and we'll look at the 7 downgrades in 11 months that Ghana has recorded with the rating agencies. It's moving from one hurdle to another. And the question is, can the 2023 budget overturn this junk system or economy that we have and deliver our broken economy from where it is? We'll also take a look at the telcos, and they have begun the deactivation of some categories of SIM cards in compliance with the Ministry of Communications directive. What does this imply for the mobile phone subscribers, and what are going to be the consequences for them moving forward? We're also asking, is your SIM safe today? What's your experience? Join us with your thoughts on these issues and the others that we'll be raising via phone and social media. The hashtag remains AM Show. Share your thoughts with us. Up next, though, the news with, yes, Pakwesi Shandorf. Do stay.
And indeed, the very last month in the year 2022. And it's now time for me to serve you the first installment of the AM News. My name is Pakwesi Shandorf. Now, the fourth consecutive negotiation between labor unions and the government for an increment in base pay for the 2023 working year has ended rather inconclusively. The unions are now asking government to increase their pay-based rate to 65%. That is 5% more than they requested in their last meeting. They've also rejected the government's best offering of 18%. My colleague Michael Washale has been following the proceedings and now files this report.
Government and the labor unions have met 4 times. At the first meeting, government offered to increase their base pay by 8%. The unions rejected that offer, including the latest offer of 18%.
We've met government progress to 18. We also progressed to 65.
Initially, the unions wanted a 60% increment in their base pay. Now, they are asking for 5% more. President of CLOCSAG, Dr. Bampo Ado, explains why.
And government says they are going to consult. We also stated that we're going to meet our constituents and then we also give them feedback. So this is how we ended. We are not being unfair. As you are aware, we've read the budget, and there's an indication that there will be an increase in VAT of 2.5. And then also, it has been indicated that the tax brackets are going to change. So this is fresh information that we've brought on the table. Because the budget has indicated certain issues relating to VAT and the tax bracket that is going to increase our burden. And so we need to compensate for that.
Deputy Secretary General of the Trades Union Congress, Joshua Ansah, says the unions will have to consult their membership before they return to the negotiating table.
I don't agree with you that it will be difficult. We've never been difficult. We've been considerate for years, and many things have gone wrong. So I think that is the time to right the wrongs. The single pay salary structure is the most indecent structure in this very country. And I think that this is the opportunity time for us to right the wrongs. So we have not been difficult. We are the same union leaders. We are the same people that took the 4 and 7%. We are the same people who are asking for 60, and the reasons are written clearly on the wall. We will never take anything below the 60%. We are not representing ourselves. We are representing our constituents. And we have to go back and inform our members who sent us to negotiate for them.
The Deputy Minister for Employment and Labour Relations, Bright Rekubrobe, says government is frustrated.
Unfortunately, we have had to table something anytime we have met, but Labour insists on a figure. So we are going back and we'll reconvene. I am disturbed. I am disturbed, but in the spirit of negotiation, we'll go back and come again. Space. It's about money. It's about ability to pay. So I am also worried that they are also not moving to come and meet us at where we can come to a compromise. Because for the fourth consecutive times, we have had to table something. And Labour says that they are unwilling to take it. So it's a clear case of frustration, very genuine one indeed. So it is not like I am not happy. Of course, you don't want me to be happy when there is this state of affairs. Well, we are going back to look at what we can do. And then if we can go further, we will let the media know. We'll let them know.
If both parties fail to reach an agreement soon, the National Labour Commission will be invited to mediate. The meeting has now been adjourned indefinitely. For JoyNews, Michael Ashale.
Let's now turn our attention to Parliament, where in a twist of events, the spokesperson of the 98 NPP MPs who are asking the President to sack the embattled Finance Minister has now mounted a strong defense for the budget during the debate. Asante Achim North MP Andy Apiakubi was prepared to lead the NPP MPs to boycott the presentation of the budget and any other business presented by Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta until a last-minute push from the party to get the MPs to attend the budget presentation. But Andy Apiakubi has now praised the measures in place included in the budget.
Mr. Speaker, it is also for us to create the necessary partnerships with industry players who probably have the financial resources to want to go into industry. So, Mr. Speaker, when we have taken advantage of the internal markets within the country and the markets as created outside the country, then we can see the import and effect of the 1G1F program. In my own constituency, and we were saying that you don't have any 1D1F. In my own constituency, Asante Achim North, and in Agogo, to be specific, we have a factory that is processing plantain. Myself, I'm a plantain farmer, so I discharge plantain to the factory, and it is onwardly exported to Canada with collaboration with CISIRS, Council for Industrial and Scientific Research. We have generated a market in Canada, and our produce coming from Agogo is destined to go to the Canadian market. So if you don't have it in your constituency, it's just that you have not been able to identify the potential that your constituency has, and you have not taken advantage of the opportunities that the ministry presents. Mr. Speaker, within the various districts, we have second cycle institutions that are ready market for the produce that come from the one district, one factory. The dough that we produce in Agogo, we are serving the secondary schools in the area. The plantain that we plant in Agogo, we are serving the secondary schools. So the market is there. Under the free trade, African free trade regime, the whole of Africa is available to us. And even before the African free trade regime, we had the ECOWAS trade liberalization scheme that also opened the whole of
Let's still stay in Parliament, where the NDC minority has welcomed the reintroduction of road tolls in the 2023 budget. The government stopped the collection of road tolls in November 2021 after an announcement in the 2022 budget. But Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta, during the presentation of the 2023 budget, announced the reintroduction of the tolls as part of government's measures to rake in revenue. Debating the statement, Minority spokesperson on roads and transport Governance Kwame Agboja, while welcoming the development, said government had been populist in cancelling the road tolls in the very first place.
On page 40, paragraph 462, we welcome the decision by the road minister to bring back the road tolls. We take no pride in saying we told you so, Mr. Speaker. It was populist, it was unnecessary, we told you, and they were there shouting, oh, we are going to do it because we had e-levy. Today, we want to bring the road toll. But Mr. Speaker, some members of the party that belong to the other side had the courage to tell you that if you want a road toll, you should go and collect it yourself. Today, they have brought a law here to say they are bringing it back. Mr. Speaker, on principle, we supported it that it should remain that time. We are still supporting it that they should bring it back. But there will be no blank checks. If you bring the road toll back, all the accruals must go into road maintenance. Otherwise, we are not going to support you. That is why we say decap the road fund. So, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of Temamoto Way, they said, we sat here and said time and again that what the minister was calling a contract between the Ghana government and Buta Angels is not a fit for purpose contract. You cannot sign a contract with a foreign company without coming to this house. Article 1781 and 5 doesn't allow you to do that. Mr. Speaker, we welcome the decision of the road minister to come back to the house with an appropriate package that to build the Accra Temamoto Way. When we look at that package and it's fit for purpose, Mr. Speaker, we would support that. Mr. Speaker, lastly, on the issue of indebtedness, Mr. Speaker, Ghanaian contractors, patriotic citizens are in serious problem. As we read this budget, there is no indication as to how we are going to pay the 12 billion or so that we owe Ghanaian contractors. Some of them are in this room. Some of them are relatives. Some of them are citizens of this country. Some of them have sold their houses. They have collateralized everything. Mr. Speaker, we must find a way of helping the government to pay these contractors. And the last.
Well, both sides have actually been very creative in advancing their respective arguments. Deputy Ranking Member on the Finance Committee, Isaac Adonko, likened Vice President Bawumia to Manchester United captain Harry Maguire, who is scoring own goals and messing up the economy.
But, Mr. Speaker, I am not surprised. If you are a fan of football, and I'm happy to see you the other day jubilating when Ghana won. But there was a player in the United Kingdom, in England, called Maguire, who was playing for Manchester United. Harry Maguire. He's a defender. He was tackling everybody and throwing his bodies everywhere, that he was seen as the best defender in the world. Manchester United went and bought him. He became the biggest threat at the center of Manchester United's defense, tackling Manchester players and giving assists to opponents. Mr. Speaker, when even the opponents failed to score, Maguire will score for them. Mr. Speaker, you remember in this country we also had an economic Maguire. This economic Maguire went to Malata market and were clapping, saying that this man is the best in managing foreign currency. The same economic Maguire was roaming at Central University, delivering lectures on how to restore the value of the city. Mr. Speaker, when we gave this Maguire the opportunity to be at the center of our defense, he became the risk of our own goal. Dr. Bawumia, our economic Maguire, is now tackling all the fundamentals of our economy and destroying all of them. When he said that he was the best in calculating inflation, he moved us to 40.4. When he said that he was the best in managing depreciation, that was 9% at the Bahamas, he moved it to 54%. Mr. Speaker, this man was crying everywhere that businesses are collapsing because of interest rate. Today, Koku Mensa Enterprise will have to borrow above the 36% government is borrowing, somewhere around 45 to 50%. Mr. Speaker, the biggest fear now is that we may be paying appearance fee for this Maguire to now score Dangbeshi against Ghana.
Well, the ruling New Patriotic Party did not let this slide without a response. MP for Seshi Akontobra Alex Tete also likened former President John Dramani Mahama to Chelsea player on loan at Inter Milan, Romelu Lukaku.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday I listened carefully to the debates or the speech made by Honorable Adonko on Maguire that he enumerated to the Vice President. Mr. Speaker, we all know that the whole world is facing with the economic crisis. And it is better for us to maintain Maguire, that we will be able to have his confidence back rather than to bring a striker like Romelu Lukaku, which Chelsea sold to Inter Milan, and later have a confidence that Lukaku can able to actually help them in their striking force, not knowing that Lukaku is the worst striker in the whole world. And we are not ready to bring such type of striker into the country again. We are here, Mr. Speaker, as a nation where the striker that the opponents are talking about the former president, is not able to pay the teachers that they actually are hired for them to talk for 24 months, but only 3 months have been paid. This debt was created by Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. That's normally called legacy debt. Mr. Speaker, we are in this country when the so-called striker is not able to provide 24 hours electricity to the Ghanaians. Now the Maguire that cannot defend the Manchester is able to provide this particular land to light for the Ghanaians. Mr. Speaker, in this country, Article 36 plus 2C actually provided how the distribution of infrastructure should be made in this country. And I can challenge both sides of the House, or the members of Parliament from both sides of the House, that since Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, through the able Minister of Roads and Highways, assumed office, has developed unprecedented roads construction in this country.
Now, away from Parliament, the Bono East Regional Director of Health Services, Dr. Fred Adomako Boateng, has bemoaned the increasing rate of diabetes in the region. He said even though men are at a greater risk of getting the disease, women constitute majority of the cases recorded over the past few years. He's therefore admonished people to regularly check their sugar levels as well as check their lifestyles in order to stay safe. And Asabit has spoiled the full report.
The month of November is National Diabetes Month, and much government and media attention is focused on the need to slow the growing epidemic of diabetes across the globe. Here in the Bono East region, the rising number of diabetes cases over the past years continue to be a source of worry for health officials. Regional Director of Health Services Dr. Fred Adomako Boateng bemoaned the increasing number of new cases of diabetes in the region.
If you look at the OPD, the number of cases that have been coming to for general care at the OPD, gone were the days. You never recorded diabetes as one of the top 10 diseases in our OPD. But as we speak now, diabetes and hypertension are among the top 10. And specifically, as we are discussing, diabetes is among the top. So it means that we are having challenges with diabetes. I can give numbers. So if you look at 2017, we had 4,820 cases diagnosed as diabetes. 2018, 6,868 new cases of diabetes. 2019, 7,537. 2020, 6,565. And then 2021, 6,219. And as we are speaking now, we have not completed a year, but we have 7,712 cases of newly diagnosed diabetes.
He further emphasized that even though men are more at risk of being diagnosed with diabetes, women constitute majority of the regional diabetes cases.
If you want to look at the sex ratio, look at the percentages for the ladies. In 2017, they were about 63% of the cases. If you look at 2018, it was about 68% of the cases. If you look at 2019, 73% of the cases that we discussed were female. The question somebody will ask, are females or sex being female a risk factor for diabetes? No. It's basically to do with way that we assess care for men and for the women. So you can see that the numbers that we are recording, almost twice the value of them are women. It means that the men are not coming, we are not picking the men, or whatever strategies that we have is not reaching the men. That is what we will look at. Because if you look at the risk factors for diabetes, things that you do that will prone you to having diabetes, the men, we have most of the risk.
Dr. Fred Adumaku-Boateng was, however, quick to encourage people to check their lifestyles as well as check their sugar statuses, adding that early diagnosis save lives.
These are the things that we want the community to know, that, look, engage in a lifestyle that will prevent you from having this problem. And even if you have it, please make sure that you check your sugar, because there are drugs there. And more importantly, engage in activity, physical activity, and let's move away from sedentary lifestyle.
The theme for this year's World Diabetes Day is education to protect tomorrow. And as Sabit, JoyNews, Kintampo.
Now, the current economic situation presents tougher times for most households with a high squeeze on family budgets. Child protection advocates are therefore predicting higher cases of abuse against children during this period of high cost of living. They say that children may suffer both verbal and physical abuse should they cause any financial loss to their families or guardians. There's more in the following report.
Over 500 cases of child neglect and an increasing spate of defilements, rape and abduction have been recorded in the Ashanti region since the beginning of 2022. The data from the Police Domestic Violence and Victim Support Units presents a dire consequential threat on the well-being of children, with the future of victims of such ill treatment at the brink of jeopardy. Dadiase, a community in the Setra East municipality, has been identified as recording increasing cases of child abuse. Nana Ekwecha is queen mother for the area.
Poverty contributes to the increase in cases. Whether or not you have money, it's your responsibility to cater for your ward. You have to work to take care of your child.
In celebration of the United Nations International Child Rights Day, the Ajeso cluster of child development centers sensitize the community on the need to promote the rights of children. The event forms part of the group's activities to holistically develop vulnerable children in area of cognition, socio-emotional, physical and spiritual traits. President of the association, Sandis Owusu-Nemako, admonished parents to contrast training their wards with abusing them.
We bring the balance here. We are not saying that children should not be trained, but there is a proper way to train a child. We do not want to damage the child as against the future where the child will be beneficial. So what we are seeing is that as parents, in as much as we want to bring up our children very well, there is a balance as to destroying the future of a child as against protecting the child against certain abuses. And so that balance should always be there. And especially around this time where times are hard, as a parent, if you are not careful, out of the anger and frustration of the economic conditions, you may be forced to overly exert pressure and force on a child. We would want everybody to know that even in these times, children are important.
The event, in collaboration with the Compassion International Ghana, aims at protecting children against all forms of violence and exploitation. Some overlooked abuses, including verbal assaults, are reported to have adverse effects on children's growth. Frank Sam is partnership facilitator of Compassion Ghana.
In fact, every day our children are abused. When we talk about abuse, people have a misconception that it's just sexual. Even the physical abuse, like beating your child, we don't see it as an abuse, but it's an abuse. The way we talk to children, how we put them into emotional stress, emotional trauma. My advice to parents is that our words to children should be encouraging. We should encourage them. We should manage our expectation for children. You don't expect a child to behave the same way you would behave.
The program was held under the theme Safeguarding the Rights and Interests of Children, a Responsibility for All. For JoyNews, Emmanuel Bright Kweku reporting.
Now, farming, we all know, is crucial for food security and also stimulates economic growth. However, lack of the time and resource to go to the farm sites to monitor the conditions of the farm and motivation to manually irrigate the farm deterred many from partaking in this particular venture. Fortunately, two computer science students of the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Isaac Junior Ampa and Blaise Ayi Dingo, have developed a smart farming system to curtail these problems. Lab FM's Kwesi Deborah has more on the following report.
We built the smart farmhouse system using IoT. Agriculture is a very profitable business which improves on food security and also stimulates economic growth. A lot of people want to invest in agriculture, but due to some problems, including lack of time and resources to go onto the farm to monitor the conditions of the farm regularly, and also manually irrigating the farm every time, they are not able to join. So putting this into consideration, my partner and I built our system, which comes equipped with sensors that provide live climatic and soil conditions to the farmer everywhere he or she is in the world through our Farm Power, which is our mobile system. And also, we integrated an intelligent smart irrigation system which also detects the amount of soil, amount of water in the soil, and activates the system to irrigate the farm. And also, an additional feature, there are situations where there is fire outbreak on the farm, and by the time you get to the farm, all your produce are gone. So we integrated an intelligent fire prevention system, which upon smoke detection automatically activates the irrigation system to quench fire. And I would like to demonstrate it to you. So as a farmer, all you have to do is log in to the app. And upon logging in, you are sent to the home page where you can track all the features or all the conditions of the app. So we have your temperature, your humidity, the water level, the amount of water in the reserve tank, the soil moisture, and the amount of light that your farm is exposed to. And upon this, you can, everything happening on the farm, you can track it from the mobile app. So when the system detects that the water level is below a certain percentage, it automatically turns on the water reserve pump, which pumps water into the reserve tank. We are using this to simulate our reserve tank. And now we can see that our water level is in the yellow range, which means it's okay. So it automatically turns off the pump. And also when the soil moisture, when the system detects that the soil moisture is below a certain range, which is not good for the plant, it also activates the pump from the reserve tank, which pumps water onto the farm to irrigate or add more moisture to the soil. Upon detecting that there is little water in the soil, it activates the pump and water is pumped onto the soil to irrigate the system. And also, water is also pumped into the reserve tank as the water level decreases.
It's a wrap on the news. For more, log on to www.myjoyonline.com. My name is Kwesi Deborah. Do have a blessed day. Bye.
Thank you for staying with us. Time now for us to dig into the newspapers, and we'll be joined by Bridget Jogbenuku and Prof as well, as we have, well, as we delve into the papers. Professor Lord Mauko Yevuga is Director and Lead Researcher, Center for African Diplomacy and Global Engagement, and Bridget Jogbenuku is how would I put it, a woman of many things, former flag bearer of the PPP. Lady, gentlemen, a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Okay, at least I've heard Bridget. Prof Yevuga, are you with us, please? All right, so we'll try to get Prof on the connection. Bridget, good to have you join us after a while. Prof, I see you. Maybe you'd have to unmute so we can hear you.
Good morning.
Great, great, great. I'm just getting a bit of an echo in your sound, but we'll try to remedy that. Let me start with you, Bridget. Like I always do, it's been a week or two or three since we last spoke. What has changed for you, and what are your quick reflections on Budget 2023? In terms of taxation, we can talk about the e-levy, VAT. What does it mean for you?
Well, a lot.
All right, it appears we're having some connection problems. We'll try to rectify those, and when they are sorted out, we'll get to our guests. But let's take a look at the Daily Graphic newspaper. And it says, court affirms Techiman South NPP candidate as winner. That's on page 16. Supplement on Farmers' Day, you find that as well. Gearing up for Friday. Supreme Court upholds tax law. Pay now, argue later. That is Justice Jones Doche, who is pictured there. He presided over the 7-member panel. And there's graphic greater real estate experience today. Let's delve into some of those stories as we try to get Bridget and Prof. Yevuga back. Now, the Supreme Court has affirmed a legal provision which makes it mandatory for taxpayers dissatisfied with a tax assessment by the Ghana Revenue Authority to pay 30% of the tax before challenging its legality. In a unanimous decision at the sitting in Accra yesterday, the 7-member panel of the Apex Court dismissed a suit filed by one Richard Amohene challenging the constitutionality of the said law. Known as the Pay Now, Argue Later rule, Section 425B of the Revenue Administration Act 2016, that is Act 915, stipulates that before a taxpayer can challenge a tax assessment by the GRA, the person must pay at least 30% of the tax in dispute. It specifically states that, quote, an objection against a tax decision shall not be entertained unless the person has, in the case of other taxes, paid all outstanding taxes, including 30% of the tax in dispute. Now, what this means is that the GRA will not hear any appeal challenging its decision for an entity to pay tax unless that entity had first paid at least 30% of the taxes as stipulated under Section 425B of Act 915. And so that is the ruling there. Of course, there are precedents according to what the High Court had ruled on this matter. But then, court affirms Techiman South MPP candidate winner. That story on page 16. That one makes for interesting reading. So the Wenchi High Court yesterday affirmed the declaration of the new Patriotic Party Member of Parliament for Techiman South, Martin Benjamin Akakpo, as the winner of the 2020 parliamentary election. After almost 2 years of hearing, the court presided over by Justice Arnold W.K. Narua held that the petitioner, Christopher Beyire Basonti, who was the National Democratic Congress candidate for the election, failed to prove his case. A total cost of 100,000 Ghana cedis, 50,000 each, was awarded to Mr. Kosa and the Electoral Commission. In that election, Mr. Kosa polled 49,682, representing 50.2% of the valid votes cast, as against 49,205 votes, representing 49.8% obtained by the NDC's candidate. Now, not satisfied with the outcome of the election, Mr. Basonti filed a petition at the Wenchi High Court seeking the declaration of the election in his favor. The results of the December 7, 2020 parliamentary election resulted in the death of 2 persons and an injury or injuries to others. And so that legal tussle, at least as far as this court is concerned, has come to an end. How about we look at another story on this page? I do not know yet whether we still have Bridget and Prof back. Okay, so I see Bridget and Prof. Let me just add the story and I'll come to you both. Low attendance characterizes budget debates, and the attendance of members of parliament, particularly the majority caucus, at the ongoing debate on the 2023 budget statement and economic policy of the government has been low. For 2 straight days since the debate commenced, the House has recorded an extremely low turnout of MPs in the chamber, with only 37 out of the 137 majority MPs turning up yesterday. When the Daily Graphic reached out to Alhaji Muntaka on why some MPs had not been in the chamber, he said about 100 minority MPs had been around since the debate started. I find that interesting. And there's also the bit about the road tolls. Now, contributing to the motion on the budget, the ranking member on the Roads and Transport Committee, Kwame Governs Agboja, said the budget had to give all MPs serious concern as it would affect the, quote, way we live our lives. He said the economic situation in the country had already started altering our lives for the poorer. And the bit about road tolls being back, he said the minority welcomed the decision by the roads minister to bring back road tolls. I'll start with you, Bridget. So we're looking at the Chichiman South situation where 2 people lost their lives and many others were injured, if you recall, in 2020. That legal tussle has come to an end at the Wenchi High Court, with the MPP's candidate narrowly being declared winner. He won by some 400 votes. Then there is this low attendance bit in Parliament, and we found out that some of our parliamentarians are enjoying themselves in Qatar watching the World Cup, and others are saying that is irresponsible. Road tolls are also back. Quick reflections.
Well, I'll start with the fact that the parliamentarians were not in court. I mean, you're in Parliament. You're in court fighting over whether somebody is legally elected as parliamentarian or not, and yet you're not showing up to do your work. So why have we voted for you to go and be in Parliament, and you are in Qatar enjoying yourself? Yesterday I saw a joke on social media about someone looking for someone to go and stand in for him at his wedding because he has to be at the World Cup. It was a joke. And this is it. I mean, that is how important Parliament and the budget for 2023, which we're going to present to the IMF, this is how important it is to our parliamentarians. They really don't care about us. They are there to enjoy themselves and to, be paid fat sums as salary and ride in V8 all over the place and be given all these perks, which we taxpayers pay, contributes to. And then they are off to sit in Qatar to have a good time. On the issue of...
But technically, is it wrong? Some would tell you, well, they have the right to be there. They are there to cheer our Black Stars.
Not at this time.
Right.
Not at this time. We are going to the IMF. This is a budget we're going to debate and take to the IMF. This is a budget that is making Ghanaians suffer. We are suffering. And instead of coming to sit to do the work and letting it go, making sure that it's a good document, it's almost as if we are just doing a technical, an academic exercise. Let's just do it because we've done it. I put on social media, on Facebook the other day, that is like, I put it in quotes. I said, you want a budget, this is a budget, take it. Because it's woozy. There was a lot left out, a lot not mentioned. It was just like an academic exercise. We've asked for a budget, the budget must be presented at this time, so we've done it.
The law stipulates that a budget must be delivered at this time, before this time, and we must so we've done it. That's it. That's what you're saying.
That is what it looked like. And now that we need to, if there was any seriousness in it, maybe they are proving to us that there's no seriousness in the budget and therefore they don't need to be here to debate it. I mean, there's a World Cup comes every 4 years. Hopefully God will sustain us and we will stay for another 4 years and qualify to play in the World Cup. But what if we don't? You can't. I mean, yes, it's good to go and support the Black Stars, but not at this time.
So was this?
It's obvious that our leaders do not see the gravity of our situation in this country. They're very detached.
Was this irresponsible or reprehensible in any way for them to go? Would you use such words to describe it?
It's irresponsible. It's irresponsible. You are our representatives. I can't go and sit in Parliament to debate that. I can only sit here on media to talk about it. And my opinion doesn't carry weight. And particularly the majority. They maybe because they had decided they were going to walk out when the budget was presented. We don't know, but you sat in there and had the budget presented. Why aren't you there to debate it? It's almost as if they don't care. They don't care about us. It's obvious. Right. You know, they don't care about the trajectory on which Ghana is going, and it's grave.
So sitting back, that's the feeling. Sitting back, that's the feeling you get. They're out there doing what they're doing because they practically do not care. That's how you feel.
Well, they've been voted into office, and that's what they wanted. They wanted to, be MPs. They've been made MPs. They, they are being paid for being MPs for what it's worth, and the rest of it can, somebody will go and sit in Parliament, but we have a football World Cup matches to watch.
That's interesting. 37 of them showing up out of 137. But what do you think quickly about the Techiman South issue?
Well, like I said, look, somebody died, and that by itself, this is it. I feel that our leaders sometimes have no compassion. People died, and okay, this is the result. Another 4 years is going to come. We're going to vote again. And you are rubbing salt in people's wounds. So fine. I happen to know the judge actually. Kudos to him. Sometimes we just must let certain things go and move forward. So he won it, fair or foul. It's the court has decided. Let's move on. Let's move on.
Let me
with
take
the road tolls.
Okay.
With the road tolls.
Yes, quickly on that.
I sincerely hope that if road tolls are going to be reintroduced, there has been an improvement. Because the reason they were taken away, one was because it was a great inconvenience for little income.
Right.
What has been done to reintroduce? Have they been digitized or have they been made electronic? Is it a drive-through? Do you buy a card that you just flash? Let's make it easy, particularly on the big trucks, and maybe graduated so that not everybody is paid. I think it was like that. It was 50 cities in one city or something, like 50 pesos in one city.
Yeah, depending on the vehicle.
I hope that graduation is still there. I hope that it has been, digitized or electronic. It's electronic in a way that it's an easy pass kind of thing, so that it doesn't traffic doesn't pile up. Let's not just as we scrapped it suddenly without giving it thought, then go back and say, okay, it's been reintroduced, so tomorrow we are starting road tolls.
Okay.
There must be an improvement.
So I'm going to Prof. I'll add one story and pick your general thoughts on that as well. But on the road tolls, I mean, yesterday, for example, I was at the Disability Career Fair at the British Council, and one thing that comes to mind, you remember the road tolls? We had quite a number of our brothers and sisters with disabilities there. My hope is that if they bring it back, yeah, maybe we can digitize some of them, but maybe we should get some of them back because we have a paucity of them working in our system. This would be an arena to get some of them to at least earn a living. So that's my thinking.
That's a good point, Ben. I'm sorry to cut in, but that is not the only place they can be employed. We can get some other places for them.
True.
This thing is causing an inconvenience because of the human factor. Let's make sure we do it properly.
Right.
And there are many places. I sympathize a lot with our brothers and sisters living with disabilities, but there are more dignified places to employ them than collecting road tolls.
True. Anyway, so let me just add this bit, Prof, and then you can share your thoughts on the Techiman South issue, the low attendance in Parliament, and that one. And I'll let Bridget, after you are done, just chip in on this. PNC calls for National Day of Repentance. PNC calls for National Day of Repentance. Now, the People's National Convention has called on the government and the various religious bodies such as the Christian Council of Ghana, the Muslim Council, and the Traditional Council to collaborate to set a day aside for national repentance for Ghanaians to seek forgiveness and implore God to heal the country. It added that only true repentance would help change the attitudes of Ghanaians and recommended that the day be marked annually. I guess that is also being looked at in terms of the state of our economy. What do you think, Prof, on these three issues?
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, and good morning to your viewers. I think the first issue I want to look at is the parliamentary situation. The fact that attendance is very poor, and the reason being that most of the members are in Qatar watching the World Cup. I think that's very unfortunate, and that reflects very poorly on our governance system generally.
Well, just a quick clarification. We cannot confirm that most of them are in Qatar. We know that some of them are there.
Well, whatever the case may be, the reason, I mean, the fact that there's empty seats in parliament, and if it's one or two people, even in Qatar at this point in time, like Bridget rightly said, that's unfortunate. We are in an economic crisis, and the national budget has been presented. And we need our members of parliament to be engaged. We want to see them working for us. Because if the ordinary person doesn't go to work, what is the repercussions of that? And I think that leadership in parliament has to be forthcoming for the reasons for the appalling numbers we see in parliament. In my view, it doesn't reflect well on our democratic governance system. And elsewhere, there'll be sanctions. So what's the sanction regime that we have for people who don't go to parliament? It doesn't matter where they've gone to. They are not in parliament. They are supposed to be there. Is there an official explanation for that? I need the leadership need to come forward. Otherwise, it's main mockery of the whole enterprise of democracy that we are having.
Right. And on the Techiman South issue, and maybe the PNC saying that we need a day of repentance?
Well, for the Techiman South, I think there must be an end to litigation. So if the matter has been brought to finality, that should be. But lessons need to be learned.
Right.
I mean, we are going to have another elections in a few years' time. What lessons have we learned from this incident? And how can we prevent some of the ugly situations that developed in the last election? So for me, the rule of law has worked, and that shows that our democracy, at least, we have a legal recourse whenever there are issues. But we need to address some of the issues that continue to recur. Elections don't need to be violent. People don't need to lose lives for people to be elected to parliament or political office. So we need to work on that as well.
All right. Bridget, a quick one on the PMC calling for a National Day of Repentance. What's your take on that? Very quickly.
You know, first of all, we are not entirely Christian. And I don't know Muslim rules on repentance and whether there should be a day or whatever.
So just to add, you notice that they talked about the Christian Council, the Muslim Council, and the Traditional Council. So they are looking at all three religious groups.
I haven't read the story, so I guess, yeah. It's a good idea. We can declare it. But I personally, and I say this to the people in my party, let's not capitalize on religion for political expediency. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in campaigning in churches. I don't believe in campaigning on religious platforms.
Right.
Let's not use religion. Let's not capitalize. That is what has brought us here. Our current government rode on the battle is the Lord's, talked about building a cathedral. This is what has brought us here. We capitalize on the collective, on the number of people we can garner through religion, either Christianity or Islam, and capitalize on that for political expediency. When true to form, I'm a Christian, true to form, it doesn't go down in our hearts. We know what we are doing. So PNC, good idea. I mean, look, we pray every day. We say the Lord's Prayer every day. We say forgive us our trespasses every day. Must we declare a day? What is it for? To show? I mean, please, let's not be doing that. Let's not be capitalizing on people's sensibilities, sensitivities for political expediency. Declare a National Day of Repentance. We go to church every day. I can't even say Sundays these days. We go to church every day. Yesterday in my backyard, there was someone praying in some language I could not understand, and on and droning on and on and on. Let us do it individually. There's no need to declare a day for that. What are we trying to do? Please God? We are not pleasing God in our hearts. We are pleasing God on the surface. And that alone is mockery. We will. It won't happen. Rather, let's declare a national day of environmental cleanliness and sanitation.
Right.
That would work.
Right. Interesting thoughts you've shared this morning. Thank you for sharing them. On the back page of the Daily Graphic, Tunisia out despite upsetting France, and they pipped France to it by 1-0. And of course, there's also some analysis about what the Black Stars should be doing ahead of tomorrow's crunch match with Uruguay. I don't know, maybe just in some 5 seconds, each one of you, what are your predictions for tomorrow's match? Ghana lock horns with Uruguay once more. Bridget, do you have a prediction?
I didn't, but if you push me, I'll say Ghana will win 2-0.
2-0. Okay.
I don't think I'm going to watch that match.
You don't think you're going to watch it? I guess in 2014, was it 2010 rather, I think.
I was pained for about a week. I was in pain. So I'm not watching this match.
Well, some of us have been in pain till now. Prof, what is your prediction?
I hope the best team wins. Obviously, I'm a Ghanaian, so I wish the Black Stars very well, and I hope they do very well.
Okay, let's get into the Ghanaian Times newspaper now. Constitutional review, it must fix flaws in society. Justice Brobe says so. Planting for food and jobs sustains Ghana's food economy. Ministry of Food and Agriculture Director says so. Moody's downgrades Ghana's credit rating from CAA2 to CA, but says country's outlook is stable. And there's also the bit about the Wenchi High Court and the Techiman South issue. Let's quickly look at these stories. Very interesting ones. So let's turn to pages 17 and 18. Planting for food and jobs sustains Ghana's food economy, and the government's flagship program in the agriculture sector, Planting for Food and Jobs, has largely sustained the country's food economy. The Director of Plant Protection Services at the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, Mr. Eric Bento Quay, has said. I'll be getting your takes on this comment because some others also disagree. Now, constitutional review, it must fix flaws in society. Constitutional review should not tackle only one arm of government, but also the others, as well as the flaws in society, says a retired Supreme Court judge, Mr. Justice Stephen Alan Brobe. According to him, there is the need for a wider stakeholder engagement and thinking on the review in order not to focus on only one aspect of governance, such as the judiciary, to the neglect of all the flaws in society that need to be fixed. So, your reflections on these two matters, the Constitution and Planting for Food and Jobs, whether Planting for Food and Jobs has served its purpose. On the Constitution, just to chip in, recently I had an interaction with Nana Dr. SKB Asante, the paramount chief of Asokore, Asante Asokore. And he was actually the head of the team, the expert team that drafted the 1992 Constitution. And even he says, look, for example, the Council of State, there are proposals that they had. Should we have a second chamber? Should we have this? President Kufuor suggested that. But fundamentally, the take is, after 30 years of using that Constitution, there are so many things that must change. What are your takes on it? I'll start with you, Prof.
Yes, thank you very much. I think that's a good call. I mean, as you said, it's been over 30 years, and constitutions are living documents. They are supposed to adjust or evolve according to the times. So if you had this thing for 30 years, we as a people should be able to come to that conclusion, whether or not it has served us well. What needs to be done to make it more effective? So I think it's a good call that we should have a national conversation and make a decision on what to do about the Constitution. It should not be left to a government in power. You know, under the President Amil's government, attempts were made to reform the Constitution, but I think
2010, the Constitutional Review Commission, 2010.
So they did their work, but we haven't seen the implementation.
And spent $6 million.
Yeah, and so that, for me, is rather problematic. Do we waste money to do an exercise and we don't get ahead with it? So if you're going to do a review, it should be a national exercise that everybody, stakeholder involvement or engagement is important, and we should all agree. It should not be a situation where a party comes into power and they decide to amend or change some aspect of the Constitution. And we don't have to always change the entire Constitution. So you need to be very careful the way you also go about the review process. I think it's a good call that after 30 years, there will be certain issues that need to be looked at, but we should do it in a more systematic, in a more nationalistic way, rather than partisan.
All right. Bridget, for you, looking at the planting for food and jobs situation, and like a director says...
I'm going to talk about the Constitution first.
Okay, go ahead. But briefly, because we're pressed for time, so go ahead.
Okay, we in our party have always talked about, that's what our manifesto has talked about, or our 10 points agenda has talked about over and over again. Pass the constitutional review first so that we will have a just and disciplined society. But the executive, the executive and the legislature are almost in bed. 50% of ministers are parliamentarians.
It's a you scratch my back, I scratch your situation. Can you blame them?
Yes, 50% of our parliamentarians must be ministers, or 50% of the ministers must come from parliament. I mean, how is that? How
Not
then
exactly.
does one take the other? You know, the judiciary. Yes, he says don't only be on the case of the judiciary, but indeed, the Minister of Justice is the Attorney General. If a minister does something, is found to be or is accused of corruption, how then does the Minister or the Attorney General decide that I'm going to try you in court when they are colleagues? You know, and things like that. Parliament, by itself, like I said, the ministers are sitting in Parliament. It's all very jumbled up. And this was, like Prof said, this was some time ago, maybe to maintain the flavor of where the country was. Things have changed. We've come 30 years. People have become more aware of what democracy should be like, what governance should be like. And indeed, the Constitution must change. The last thing I'd like to say about the Constitution is to say that we must elect our own local government leaders, our own DCs or our MMDCs. It must change because really central government is not able to govern at the local level. It's very difficult. I mean, up until now, today, I believe that the district assemblies common funds have still not been paid. I live in Teshi, Lekma. You should see our roads. It's terrible. And I want to go to Lekma and say, look, do something about the roads. But I know the common funds have not been paid. So how do I go and say to them, how do I even march in there and make noise? You know?
So let's wrap with these stories. I'll tie two of them together in one breath. Benjamin,
I'm sorry I'm disrupting your program today, but for Planting for Food and Jobs, you know, you can't make declarations facts. You are declaring Planting for Food and Jobs sustains Ghana's food economy. We all know what's going on. And besides, how expensive is the food? You mean this Ministry of Agric thing you did for 2 days, then suddenly it's sustaining us? I mean, please.
They are talking about other initiatives, that included, but not restricted to just that.
I know, but still.
All right. So in the
food
business...
is there, but it's expensive. It's expensive. We are struggling.
Right. So I'll stay with the Ghanaian Times, but I'm bringing in another story. While in one breath, the IMF is saying macroeconomic stability will be restored, Stefan Rude, the IMF mission chief for Ghana, says it has assured Ghanaians, or he has assured Ghanaians, it will assist government to restore macroeconomic stability and spur growth and bring the much-needed relief to them. When you look at the Ghanaian Times newspaper, Moody's is downgrading Ghana's credit once more. And here's what it says. Moody's, an international rating agency, has downgraded Ghana's long-term issue credit ratings to CA from CAA2. What does it mean? Ghana has been downgraded deeper into junk territory by Moody's Investor Service on the likelihood that private creditors will incur steep losses during the government's planned debt restructuring, Bloomberg has reported. So haircut and you may suffer the consequences. Quoting them, the country's credit rating was slashed by 2 levels to CA, the second lowest score at Moody's, according to a Tuesday statement. Now that puts Ghana at par or on par with Sri Lanka, which is in default, Bloomberg reported. That's where we find ourselves now. The CA rating reflects Moody's expectation that private creditors will likely incur substantial losses in the restructuring of both local and foreign currency debts. I'll start with you, Prof. quick reflections on our economy, a la what I just read, and then we'll wrap with some headlines.
Yes, so these news stories are not good news for us as a country. It doesn't take foreigners to tell us how bad the economy is. We here in Ghana can feel it, and we all know all along that things are not well. So Moody's and IMF coming to say what they're saying is just confirming what the ordinary Ghanaians know already.
Right.
But the bigger issue here is the economy, how our economy has been structured over the years. I mean, the fact that now we need the IMF and other external actors to validate what we do here tells you the dependency of our economy. And for a long time, Ghanaian economy has literally been propped up by these international donors, and it's coming back to haunt us. And we need to seriously rethink the way we manage our economy as a country.
Right.
And on one hand, you cannot blame IMF and the World Bank without looking at the internal causes of some of these problems. How have you managed our economy as a country? And if we don't do that and we keep blaming only external factors, then we are not going to get to the bottom of the issue. We need to have a clear national discussion about how do we want economy to be going forward.
Okay.
I mean, since the 1980s, the IMF and the World Bank have been praising us for doing so well. How come that all of a sudden they are telling us that we are not doing so well at all? And we are now coming to go back to the IMF for the same policies that we started with them in the 1980s. That tells you that that paradigm is not the way forward. We need to go back to the basics.
The Daily Guide newspaper, Techiman Seat, NPP floors NDC, petitioner to pay 100K. Owusu Bempah, 6 others discharged. That story on page 3. An independent auditor to check Auditor General. Your final thoughts, Bridget?
On what exactly? On which of them?
So I don't think you reacted to the bit about the Moody's downgrade, for example. Maybe you could feed that into your final thoughts.
I mean, it is what it is. We are sinking lower and lower. You said it's the lowest, and we are being compared to Sri Lanka. What can we say?
It's the second lowest for Moody's. That's the second lowest in their rating, and now we are on par with Sri Lanka.
Yes. I mean, when did we get here, and how did we get here? And it's not simply COVID and Ukraine. I say that, there's also attitude. We must accept responsibility of what we did wrong.
Right.
And we must lay the ego aside and ask people who can help us to come in and help. And if, for sure, I mean, if, for example, now you go and talk about this to the Ministry of Finance, they'll say, well, since you censured the minister, this is where we've come. Nobody wants to accept responsibility for what they have done wrong.
Right.
And it's about time we accept that we have done certain things wrong.
Right.
It's about time we put the attitude aside, thinking that we have it all down pat and only we can solve the problem.
Right. Well, thank you so much. But before you go, Prof, I'd like you to just give us a bit of a take on today's program at GIMPA. It has to do with the Center for African Diplomacy and Global Engagement. You have a program there today, and I hear the Speaker of Parliament, Right Honourable Bagman, is going to be there. Tell us a bit about that before you leave us.
So this is a new center that's being launched today at GIMPA at 10 o'clock by the Speaker of Parliament. He'll be giving the keynote address. There will be a center is committed to promoting diplomacy as the best approach to solving global issues. And also it's a way of helping us to engage more. Africa has not engaged globally. And if you look at what has happened since the COVID and recently Russia, Ukraine, it tells you that we are so interconnected. But in our national discussions, we don't seem to talk international affairs. We don't seem to engage globally. Why do we locate ourselves? Ghana used to be the center when it comes to Pan-Africanism and international politics as far as Africa is concerned. We lost that. And this center is aiming to be finding ways in which Ghana and Africa, for that matter, can be globally engaged, where global issues become everyday issues for discussion, so that by so doing, we are in a global village, as they say. But what is our role and place in that global village? So the center will be launched today, and after that, there will be a series of engagement and activities that will propel African worldviews, African knowledge on international affairs to the mainstream.
Wow. Well, all the best with that, and congratulations to GIMPA and to your outfit for putting all of this together. That is Professor Lord Mauko Yevuga, Director and Lead Researcher, Center for African Diplomacy and Global Engagement. Prof, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
We also had our very own Bridget Jogbenuku. Bridget, now you're one of us. That's why I'm saying our very own. You are one of us now.
Really?
Yes.
Well, claim me.
Bridget, thank you so much for your time. And both of you do have an awesome day.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right. And that's how we wrap up with the news review. But coming up next, Tunisia pipped France yesterday by a lone goal. Poland has qualified, Saudi Arabia no. There are so many more dynamics. We'll be sharing them with you in sports. And of course, ahead of tomorrow's crunch tie with Uruguay, we'll bring you some scope in respect of what we can expect. Do stay for that.
Well, it's the 12th of the ongoing FIFA World Cup, and the Mundial is bringing us all the chills and all the expectations for some countries, and we'll continue to bring you everything that is trickling down in Doha, Qatar. My name is Abigail Sanasusu, and welcome to AM Sports here on your JoyNews channel. First, Argentina coasted past Poland in a 2-0 victory to top Group C and confirm their place in the last 16 of the ongoing FIFA World Cup in Qatar, whereas Poland managed to squeeze through to the next stage on goal difference at the expense of Mexico, who beat Saudi Arabia 2-1 in Group C's other game. Also in Group D, France had a goal ruled out by VAR for offside in the final minutes of stoppage time as Tunisia held on to register a shock victory over the world champions. However, despite the win, the North Africans failed to qualify for the last round of 16 of the World Cup. It was Australia who went through after beating Denmark. So France will come up against Poland, whilst Argentina will face Australia when the round of 16 matches commence. But let's take a look at the fixtures coming up for today. And so Costa Rica will take on Germany, and Japan will take on Spain. Canada face Morocco, and Croatia play Belgium. Remember that there'll be live commentary on Joy 99.7 where we'll bring you that game between Canada and Morocco at 3 p.m. and at 7 p.m. is going to be Japan and Spain. Simultaneously on Joy Prime, we get to watch Japan and Spain also at 7 p.m. Well, we shift attention to the Black Stars of Ghana, who are also stepping up preparations in a bid to qualify for the last 16 of the World Cup as well, but they have Uruguay standing in their way. The South Americans had inflicted pain on Ghanaians during the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, a match which had a bit of everything in football, where my colleague George Addo Jr. had put together this report and reliving the Ghana-Uruguay clash 12 years ago, a story titled Revenge Mission.
It's a goal. It went past the line.
It's 12 years and I still, at times when you go to social media, people still think about it, people still comment about it. I think it's time that we have to, we have to let our brother be.
It's a goal. It's a goal. It's a goal. It's a goal. Goal. Yeah, watch it. Penalty.
Against Serbia, I had scored through a penalty. Against Australia, I scored in the second game penalty. So I was the most confident man in the world.
Penalty. Oh my God.
When I realized, in the room, the memory came and I started crying.
Wow.
So, the whole night, all of us, all the players, everybody was down.
Some of us, when you look, I have goosebumps because when we talk about that particular scene, it's still haunting some of us. So just imagine as someone who took that kick.
when I'm alone. When I'm alone in my room, I just picture the whole thing, and then I wish we had gone back.
It's been 12 years, and it's still not a story told without pain as a Ghanaian. What could have been a World Cup semi-final bet for Ghana and Africa was not, and is not. So it's deep into the second half of extra time. The Black Stars are awarded a free kick diagonal to the edge of the Uruguayan penalty box. John Paintsel sends a long one into the penalty box. It's flicked on feather by Kevin Prince Boateng into the goalkeeper's 6-yard box. An on-rushing Muslera clashes with John Mensah. The ball falls down and it goes to Stephen Appiah, who hits it left-footed. Luis Suarez is on the line and blocks with his leg. The ball is back up in the air. Dominic Adia rises highest, connects with his head. It's goal-bound. Fuchili attempts to push the ball out with his hand. He fails. Luis Suarez succeeds. Red card, penalty to Ghana, no goal. Asamoah Gyan had the opportunity to put Africa and Ghana into the semi-final for the first time. He steps up, right-footed, hits the crossbar even though he beats goalkeeper Muslera. Time for penalties. Dominic Adia and John Mensah will miss. Sebastian Abreu has just got one job to do. It's a Panenka over goalkeeper Olele Kinson. Uruguay are through to the next stage of the competition. Ghana knocked out. The cameras will catch Luis Suarez jubilating, and that hits.
The events of 10th June 2010 at the Soccer City Stadium in South Africa can hardly be forgotten. Many fans wondered if there was a way to reverse the inevitable. This picture made the rounds. Many fans believed Stephen Appiah warned Asamoah Gyan before he took the decisive kick. Not exactly the case.
Okay, what happened was when Suarez used his hand to clear the ball from the post, it was today VAR will say it's a goal. So I saw the linesman running, going towards the center line. So with the vuvuzela, and people were like, there were so many stories that I was holding the ball and Asamoah Gyan came to take the ball from me, and it wasn't true. So what happens was he was the one holding the ball rather. And I went to him telling him that he should look at the linesman going to the center line, so that means accepted it as a goal. So he moved. It took the referee, I think, 5 seconds or more to decide that it was a penalty because the ball was beyond the line. So he moved to go and take that penalty kick, and I mean, he missed it. I mean, it happens as we talk about Roberto Baggio in the 90s. But I think that particular tournament, I think that Asamoah was the right person to take that kick. I can decide to take, but I think because against Australia, I mean, he took it and he scored. Against Serbia, perfectly. So I think that at that moment, I mean, his confidence level very, very high. So I think that he was the right person to take that kick.
So what went wrong with Ghana's best penalty taker then?
Honestly, against Uruguay, I wanted to put it on the far corner.
Okay.
And the goalkeeper's right.
Okay.
You know, but I got the techniques wrong. My left wasn't stuck that well. You know, so technically I got it wrong. You know, so that was why the ball went that high. You know, but normally my penalty doesn't go
that high.
Even the penalty shootout, I scored, but I don't know how that ball went that high. Although I scored, I felt like it was even a mistake.
It's gone, but the pain is still fresh. According to John Paintsel, who launched the ball deep into the Uruguayan penalty box from the free kick, he went blank after the incident.
Yeah, after the game, me, myself, I didn't say anything against Uruguay. I didn't say anything. I just find myself in my hotel room because we were off. The penalty shootout, after we lost the game to Uruguay, the rest was history. I didn't see anything post-match, how we walked to the bus, how we get to the hotel. Don't remember. Last thing I remember was I was in my room. I was in my room alone. Yeah. When I realized, like, okay, I mean, in the room, then the memory came and I started crying. The whole night, all of us, all the players, everybody was down. And they were knocking our doors to come out and then take something. The person president of the Ghana Football Association, and he wanted to talk to us. A lot of dignitaries came, that we have to go to Mandela's house to give thanks to him for the support he gave us. So, I mean, once they mention Mandela, then we all have to open the doors and go out and then say thanks to him.
And just maybe, Luis Suarez hasn't made it any easier for Ghanaians to forget. With his comments after the incident, "The hand of God now belongs to me. I made the best save of the tournament. Sometimes in training, I play as a goalkeeper, so it was worth it." These were his words after the deed. Suarez's win at all cost mentality appears to be hardwired into him. So diving to get two hands on Dominic Adia's goal-bound header was no-brainer. Somehow, Ghana and Uruguay have been paired at the upcoming World Cup in Qatar. Current players have different motivation going into this one. The emphasis is one of qualifying, but the fans view this differently. Many Ghanaians believe a legitimate goal was disallowed because the ball had already crossed the line. And perhaps the picture of Luis Suarez celebrating made it a lot worse. It's revenge on the Ghana side of things.
Teams in our group are strongest, and look at what fate has made. Brought Uruguay into our group again, you know. It would be sweet revenge if we score them. And so please, even if you don't beat anybody, Uruguay, just beat them for me. You know.
It's a revenge, because what they did to us wasn't very good. Looking at how Suarez got the ball out of the line. If in case the goal line technology was available, like the goal would have stood.
All I want is a revenge. We should beat them so that they know that in football, you might beat somebody some other day, but the next time the person also will seek a revenge and then beat you, not just beat you, and beat you well.
Watching this match will be somehow sad, because for me, I feel like Ghana should score Uruguay so that at least we also feel good.
And well, that's the kind of subplots you want for a game involving Ghana and Uruguay that may likely decide who makes it into the round of 16 of the World Cup in Group H. George Addy Jr., Joy Sports.
So to be or not to be, clemency or revenge, retribution or leniency, we wait to see what happens tomorrow at 3 p.m. when the Black Stars of Ghana come face-to-face with the South Americans again. But that'll be all for sports on the AM show. My name is Abigail Senesusu. We are back at midday with more.
Well, thank you very much for staying with us. We talk the economy now and matters arising on the back of that latest Moody's downgrade as well. Where do we go from here as far as it reflects on budget 2023? Well, so far, 7 downgrades are what we have seen in 11 months, and that's a record here in Ghana with the ratings agencies. Can the 2023 budget overturn this junk status that our economy seems to have adopted? Well, joining us for that conversation, we have our guests. John Osai Kwapong is a CDD fellow. We also have Dr. Richmond Etiahene, a banking consultant. Then we're joined by Professor Charles Aka, Senior Research Fellow with ISA. We also have Dr. Joseph Obeng, President of GUTA. They'll be sharing their thoughts from the business community's perspective. But for now, though, let me come into the studio. Isaac Kofi, my right-hand man, is right here to break down the data for us. Isaac, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Ben.
Hope you're well.
Oh, yes, I'm fine. How about you?
Well, we're okay, by God's grace. So let's get down to the data. What exactly are you going to be digesting for us this morning?
Well, so you spoke about the 7 different downgrades from 3 different ratings agencies this year. And so if you look at the chart I have on the touch screen right now, it will tell you the number of downgrades we've had from these 3 different ratings agencies. It started on 14th January this year, where Fitch was the first to come into the scene with a downgrade of B-2 with a negative outlook. Then, less than a month, we had Moody's also following with a CAAA1 with a stable outlook, and then there was S&P with a CC, plus with a negative outlook on August 1st, 2022. Now, since then, we've seen reviews upon reviews as far as Ghana's downgrade is concerned. This is about our, sovereign bonds on the international front. So, yesterday or 2 days ago, when Moody's actually reviewed their 30th September, ratings, they actually sent our sovereign bond. They tagged it as, a CA, meaning it moved from a C AAA2 to now a CA. Now, Ben, if you look at the scale, it's from A to, A AAA down to a C. And so if you look at the scale, the last three ratings that you can see on the scale is actually a CAA, then we have a CA, then we have the C being the last one. So this is the last but one scale that we are on. It simply means that our bonds aren't doing well. They are actually in, a deeper junk zone. And they cited, the reason why they had to push our bonds to this category. They cited, the government's intention to do a debt restructuring in 2023. Now, we've had a lot of conversations about whether there's going to be a haircut or there's not going to be any haircut. Government has actually come out to say that they'll do something they call debt exchange. Debt exchange, whatever it is still debt restructuring. And so Moody's actually cited this and said that they believe that, the private sector will have, a big loss if this debt restructuring is concerned at both the domestic and the international front. Now, just like I was walking you through the rating scale, if you have a CA, what does it simply mean? A CA simply means that, your debt levels are actually unsustainable. And you've seen that this year, or getting to the last, the last 2 months or 3 months, we've seen all these ratings agencies citing the same reason for the kind of, tag that we have on our sovereign bonds. So Moody's, and on 29, just about 2 days ago, when they gave us the CA, actually said that the announcement of debt restructuring in the 2023 budget by the finance minister was actually one of the main reasons or the key driver of they giving us this tag.
So just to take a bit of a pause there, it confirms then the things we've been told about a debt restructuring. You remember when we interacted with Deputy Finance Minister Dr. John Kumar, there was some talk about certain bonds, and then there was talk later on that no, it's not a haircut, so to speak. But if the credit rating agencies are telling us that per their readings, there is a haircut, there is debt restructuring, then it means we are in that territory now.
Absolutely. So we have all four of them here. First was the president on October 30th. He said he was very categorical that there wasn't going to be any haircut. He referred to this as a rumor and that we should actually move away from this.
But there was an explanation of that by Kojo Nkrumah after he had said that.
He said that my understanding is that probably there will be no principal will be affected, but principals will have a haircut in, and it says in other words, your principal may remain, however, you would have definitely lose out or suffer haircuts on the interest. So he was saying that there was not going to be any haircuts on your principal, or probably you have your interest on your bonds or your securities being affected. Then the finance minister came in on 24th November when he read the budget, and he said there's going to be a debt exchange program. Now, the last time a country did a debt exchange program, I think that was Jamaica. They did about, in 2010. And it's the same thing. It was debt restructuring. They just called their creditors to come and just shop for the debt that they actually owed them. And then they were giving new terms and conditions. It's either you have your interest, the time that you're supposed, the interest rate that you're supposed to get being truncated, or maybe, if you're supposed to take your principal, the duration or the maturity period was actually extended. Then we had, the deputy finance minister also giving some clarity over there. He is saying that he believes that those who are in the international front or the external will probably have about 30% cuts. And I think that this actually was the reason why one of the reasons why Moody's actually downgraded us, because if you're going to do a debt restructuring on the international front, then you should know that probably in the next 6 months or 7, there's the likelihood of you going back to the Eurobond market to get the 3 billion that you always get to help your economy. You are really going to lose out. So they all cited debt restructuring. So it means this is a very key, a condition to an IMF program. And the IMF made it very clear that, before they will go ahead to give you any program, your debt levels must be sustainable. And in cases where a country's debt is tagged as unsustainable, that country must go ahead to do a debt restructuring before an IMF program that country will be given the go-ahead to do an IMF program. So there's a template for Ghana to follow. If you look at Zambia, they actually ran to the IMF December 2020, when they were actually the first country to import in Africa. So they went to the IMF for a program. But the IMF looked at their books and saw that their debt levels were unsustainable. So Zambia had to do a debt restructuring before they finally got the $1.3 or $1.4 billion IMF program.
And we can say for a fact that they are doing pretty well since that time.
Absolutely. If you look at the Zambian kwacha, it's one of the best performing currencies against the US dollar. Their inflation has actually moved from a double digit now to a single digit, somewhere around 9.4%.
Yeah.
And so it tells you that when IMF is in the picture, there's some sort of good.
That is, if you do the right things.
You do the right thing.
And that is something we've been blamed for, that we should have started our own restructuring process even before the IMF came in, so that by the time they came in, we'd be able. That is the Zambian example. We have not done that.
So if you look at the 2019 Article 4 assessment that the IMF made, it was clear that we're at high risks. 2021, same thing was there, and we were hoping that the kind of reserve that we had then, which was about $10 billion, could take us. The whole year we could use
that turned out to be a false hope.
Because now that 10 billion reserve has now dwindled from 10 billion now to 6.7 or 6.6 billion dollars, and that can afford you just 2.9 months of imports. It's less than 3 months. And when you find yourself in this situation, definitely you need someone who will give you a loan at a cheaper rate, because you can't go back to the international market again.
Yeah, because the rates are not favorable.
They aren't telling you to come, but they are telling you that when you come, be ready to pay high interest. So if I was giving you at 8%, because you are at high default or likelihood that you default, I probably will give you the loan at 25% or 80%.
And so that in any case, even if you default, it wouldn't affect
your interest will actually crowd out, or it will actually offset the kind of loss that I will bear. And so would there be a haircut? The finance minister has also been speaking, but the condition that I spoke about, the IMF will never give you a loan if your debt levels are unsustainable. You have to go ahead to do a debt restructuring before you get the opportunity to spend any money. Remember that if IMF approves, 3 billion for us to spend, it doesn't mean that we're going to have, the entire 3 billion given to us to spend at a go. We have to meet certain conditions before 3 billion that we are hoping to get from them, we actually get it.
I mean, the disbursements are done based on need and what specifically is going to be done. When you look at the Argentinian case, for example, I think of the 40-something billion that they were meant to get, I think 42 billion. They were given 3-point-something, or is it 4-point-something billion initially. So that's how it goes, based on need. And but one thing I find interesting, the fact that according to Bloomberg, we're now on par with Sri Lanka. That is, I mean,
which is actually
staggering.
It's something that we can't really talk about as a country, because it's not a matter of being at the same place with Sri Lanka, but the kind of tag, the economic tag that both of us will have is what we're talking about. I mean, Sri Lanka is also just any country like Ghana, but the kind of situation they are in, we actually do not want to be.
And that sends a very wrong message to investors as well.
Absolutely.
Because they wouldn't want to risk putting their money in this economy.
Absolutely. If I'm giving you a loan and I look at you and I see that, you can't pay, there's no way I'm going to, give you that loan. Or probably I'll give it to you, but it will come with conditions that are probably very austere. So, so if there is a haircut, what's going to be the effects on investors or those who have securities with government. So we checked this. The last time government actually updated this data repository was in the 2021 debt report. And we were actually able to glean these data. So if you look at, from the domestic sector, those who are having securities with government, domestic investors have about 152.4 billion Ghana cedis with government as securities. And this is about 84% of the entire, securities that government had in 2021. The domestic sector, if you break it down, banking sector had about, 91 billion. We had the non-banking sector about 61.4 billion. And foreign investors in our domestic market also about 28.9 billion. It was about 16%. So if you look at this, you could see that if anything should happen, the banking sector will be hit significantly, will actually take a hit significantly. So you heard the governor saying that they are actually observing the situation. And so if there's anything that will probably cause the banking sector to actually go back to the 2017 or 2018 level, they will step in to make sure that they have the kind of liquidity that they need. But certainly we do not want to do this and spend about additional 25 billion or 30 billion to do another banking sector restructuring or banking sector.
Definitely we cannot afford to do that. Kofi, thank you so much for sharing those details with us, bringing us the scope on where exactly we find ourselves post that Moody's downgrade further down the ladder. But anyway, let me bring in now, as we engage our guests, Sepchum Akwabwa. He is CEO, Association of Ghana Industries. He joins us via the phone lines. Mr. Akwabwa, thank you for joining the conversation. I hope you're well, sir.
Yes, by God's grace, I'm fine.
Great. For you, the Association of Ghana Industries, let's go straight down to it. What does it mean? Some of the dynamics that we have to grapple with. We've been told that our tax handles have increased. The minority, for example, suggesting 23 of them have been added on. We know the e-levy and VAT situation. And now, in terms of our economy, our credit ratings are going plummeting fast. What does this mean for the business community? What does it mean for the AGI?
Well, thank you very much. For us, first of all, we appreciate the effort to bring stability, because we've said several times prior to the budget reading that our major issue in this budget is to see signs of stability, indicators that government is going to bring stability. And I think the effort to pursue the IMF intervention and the requirements that goes with it is to see some effort, because the key effort is to generate more revenue domestically, show up your revenue levels to be able to meet your expenditure. Otherwise, IMF intervention may even be difficult to manage. So we see that effort. But while doing so, we also appreciate one key thing that now everybody is talking about, and that is the need to concentrate on domestic production, improve industrialization to reduce importation. I think the recent experience we've had through the COVID period and even now is the depreciation of the cedi. Clearly, is part of the reason is the over excessive importation that is bedeviling us. So, mention have been made in the budget that effort will be made to concentrate on local production. So, though all those efforts are very important, and it all depends on how it is well implemented. For us as an association, we are ready to work with government to ensure that we have effective implementation of some of these policies to improve the productive sector. But having said that, I think when it comes to some of the taxes, we have a challenge with it. For example, the VAT being increased to 2.5% whilst maintaining the recent VAT regime. Recall that previously when it was 17.5%, it was clearly input-output tax, so you recover all the VAT that you pay to government through your sale. Then last year, there was an imposition of a levy. So 6%, in fact, last year it was 5%, last year it was 6%. So this 6% cannot be recovered. It meant that when you pay out 18.5% to government, you can only recover 12.5%. That additional levy didn't help manufacturing. So we thought that for this year, it's one of the inputs we made, that we were going to reverse the situation. Now we have increased the VAT without necessarily changing the VAT regime. it means that that additional levy is there and you are paying more VAT when you add it. And a certain portion, that levy part is also a tax on tax. So when you calculate it, in actual fact, it becomes about 21.5%. And we think this is on the higher side, and it doesn't support manufacturing. Bear in mind that most of the well-organized manufacturing companies and industrial companies are on this VAT regime. A lot of the traders who buy and sell, who import, are actually on the flat rate. So when you have increased the VAT rate without necessarily increasing the flat rate, then you have an issue because you are reducing tax for importers. So I think we have to look at it critically, especially with the talk of trying to improve local production, supporting local manufacturing, making them more competitive. You shouldn't have a tax regime that is runs counter to whatever your objectives are. So I think this is one area that has to be done. We are aware that government has made an effort to reverse the benchmark value, which is good because it's something that we thought was not the right policy. And we appreciate the effort being made to revise it, which is good. However, we think that to support manufacturing, we need to look at the whole regime critically. And I'm not talking about the benchmark policy. I'm talking about the regime of supporting local manufacturing. Bear in mind that the manufacturers also import a lot. They also import raw material. And for most countries, raw material importation comes in free because you don't pay the duty at the time of importation. You rather pay it after, we call it post-production tax. So we would love to see more post-production tax instead of pre-production tax. So, for example, can we look at a waiver on duties and taxes on raw materials so that it encourages local production? And then we plan in a way that we get to a state where even the raw materials that are being imported are all produced locally. We develop the value chains and we'll be able to make a good impact on the manufacturing sector. For me, the principle of going manufacturing and supporting industry is the best and it's the right time to do. If this time, I don't know how and when we're going to do it again. So there are issues in the budget that I think we need to get better, we need to work together with government. A lot of gray areas also are in here, and we need to discuss it better to see how well it's going to be implemented. But I think if we're able to do it well, we turn around the economy in the long run.
Right. So, Seth, just a quick reaction. Based on all the things that you've said, what can the business community expect in 2023? Is it going to be any better? We've heard from the Vice President saying that the economy will soon be restored. The economy will soon be buoyant again. Are you that expectant? What is the business community looking forward to in 2023? Briefly on that.
Well, I think that we expect stability. As for significant growth, we shouldn't have high expectation on that.
Okay.
Because if you look at the government's own projection of growth, we are projecting to grow about 2.8% or so. So it's not a very high expected growth. And therefore, significant growth we didn't really expect. But at least we should have stability. And from all indications. And it also depends very much on how well we're able to implement some of the policies and ideas that are in the budget. The challenge we have in Ghana is always the challenge of implementation. In principle, we have good policies, but implementing them becomes a challenge. But if we implement it, I think we at least have stability and have normal. And then subsequent years, we expect some growth. But huge growth next year, I think we highly unrealistic.
All right. Mr. Akakpo, we are grateful that you took the time to join us this morning for a conversation. Thank you so much for your time, sir. And that is Mr. Seth Akakpo, who is with the Association of Ghana Industries. Let's now bring in Dr. Joseph Obeng of the Ghana Union of Traders Association, GUTA, as they are popularly known. Dr. Obeng, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you so much for making the time to join us this morning. We've heard of many different dynamics and the tax handles being, rearranged, so to speak, as far as the 2023 budget statement is concerned. What are your quick reflections on that? How does that factor into the exchange rate, the inflationary rate, and some of the dynamics we are now looking at? E-levy, as it is, no threshold, but reduced to 1%. VAT up by 2.5 percentage points. And now, on the credit side, we are, facing even worse in terms of the ratings agencies. What is your quick analysis of all of what is going on? What does it mean to you, the business community?
Yeah, it is very unfortunate regarding the rating agencies. It does not augur well for the nation. And that's why all of us, as citizens of this country, should come together and find any means to support government to come out of this challenge, a huge challenge that we have in. And it also means that government also have to work with all of us, listen to our input positively, so that we will be able to successfully come out of this mess that we found ourselves. Now, much as we want to come out of our problem, we do not necessarily have to also overburden the taxpayer. And that I also admit the fact that government is doing everything possible with regard to the tax exemption measures that they are doing to stop the tax exemption abuses and other areas. But what we have problem with is the fact that taxes are not made to ensure compliance. What our structures are, as in regard to the VAT, it does not ensure compliance at all, and that's what government needed to structure, to reform, before even thinking about any increment. Now, we have a serious problem. The tax structure is not conducive for trading activities. That's why our brothers in Kumasi embarked on that demonstration. And now the structure itself is not being looked at. There's no uniformity with this tax system. And then we found it prudent to increase the tax rate. This is not good, even for the economy, the economics of it, because it means that people will be unable simply to comply, and for government to get its revenue. And then prices of goods are also going to go up unnecessarily. Now the benchmark discounts have been taken off. And as a matter of fact, it has been taken off a long time, and that we are not getting any advantage of any benchmark discount. And it has made prices, duty payment gone up, astronomically high, to the extent that much as we admit that we have to, am I on? Much as we are,
yes, you're on.
That we have to encourage local production. That's why government have also fence ring some 10 products that they are going to help, and then that they are going to support and then restrict importation. We don't have any problem at all with that regard. But it also means that there are so many items that we do not produce here that we have to make sure that we are able to bring to come and service the good people of the country. Now the VAT have been increased and is going to add up to the cost of doing business. You know, the e-levy also, though it was reduced by 5%, 1% have been increased to those who were having the threshold. And so I was expecting that once the threshold is removed, we should have made it affordable, about 0.5%, where the compliance will be fully assured, and that government will also have its bit to develop the country. But the VAT is a worrying area that we will need Parliament to look at. Already, the businesses are overburdened with taxes. And so for you to increase it and also to aggravate our problem, especially when it will also add up to duty payment. When we say duty payment, we are talking about where one used to pay about 50,000 Ghana cedis for a container. Now it has moved to about 300,000. That's what we are talking about. So
right.
it's not a small increment that we are talking about. And because the benchmark is removed, okay, he said that it's removed for the development of the local industries. We will support it. We will not talk about that. But at least for the VAT, it should be looked at, and then the structure itself, the structure of the tax system should be reformed, so that there should be uniformity, and then compliance will be assured.
Okay, Dr. Obeng, at least you've shared your thoughts with us on this. We'll see, especially as the debate of the 2023 budget goes on. We'll see what happens. But with the introduction of the new tax handles that we've been told have crept in just some 30 seconds, how do you feel about that? And, for example, road tolls are back. You know, other things are being factored in. How will that affect the business community in some 20 seconds?
Yeah, expanding the tax net from any angle is what we support, because we think that we of the importing community have been overly surcharged with all these taxes. And so broadening the tax net, like the yield levy and all that, that's why we've been supporting. So that when the tax net is widened, then we can also have a respite as the importing community.
Right.
So the road tolls that have been introduced is very good, and that's why it should take care of the 2.5 VAT increment, because they said that they are going to use it to cater for the roads, and that we should modernize the road tolls. And that if you do it well, we can get everybody that we want to have and to develop. We have modern ways of doing this, and that we should do it self-automated, that nobody can sit at the booth and collect the money. If you do that, then we will relieve the trading public from these excessive taxes, and then the consuming public also having some respite. And so we plead with Parliament on the VAT to take a second look so that it will bring some comfort to businesses.
Dr. Obeng, thank you so much for your time with us. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Let me now bring in banking consultant Dr. Richmond Etiahene to share your thoughts. The last time I had an interaction with you, I spoke to you about the banking sector and what all of this would mean. Now that we're looking at another downgrade when it comes to our credit ratings and everything, in the midst of all that we have to do, we've been told we don't have money to play around with. What are going to be the consequences of this downgrade, even as we, try to get a deal from the IMF? Dr. Etiahene, you will have to unmute, please. Please press the unmute button. Hello, Doc. If you can hear me, please press the unmute button, the one with the microphone, so that we can hear you. All right, let me bring in John Osai Kwapong, CDD Fellow. I'll come back to Dr. Etiahene shortly. For you, John, looking at the latest issues that we have to grapple with, economically speaking, the tax handles that have been increased or brought back, the different, levies that we're being slapped with, and our credit ratings going further down into junk status. What do you make of it all? What could it bode for us in 2023?
Well, good morning. I think for me, the clearest indication of all of these different things coming together is an indication that the road to recovery, to full recovery, will be slow, but also will be quite painful. I was looking at the macroeconomic targets for 2023, and they looked very, very, very modest, and understandably so. Growth is being projected at no more than 2.8. The inflation target is about 18 point something, roughly 19%. And even on that, when I listened to the governor from the central bank talk about the increase in the monetary policy rate, he is actually projecting that inflation would sort of start stabilizing a little bit by the end of first quarter of 2023. But even then, he was pegging it at about 25%. So you clearly see that we have quite a ways to go in terms of full economic recovery and fully turning things around to the point where the kind of pinch points that Ghanaians are feeling will begin to lessen a little bit. But and then again, at the back of a new credit rating downgrade, we are already struggling with this sort of access to the international capital markets. So at the back of another credit rating downgrade, that exacerbates the problem. Hopefully, one of the things that I've been looking forward to is to see the extent to which the actual details of whatever program we are able to strike with the IMF, and what sort of reliefs would come with that in terms of giving the government some room and some space to be able to also speed up certain things that they want to do to turn the economy around. They have a 7-pillar program under the acronym PCPG, in which they identify some key things that they believe, if it is done, would again put the country's economy on a different path, in this post-COVID recovery era. But again, the bottom line for me is that the road ahead is going to be very challenging, very difficult, very painful. But hopefully, at some point, things would turn around, because again,
at what point do you project? At what point do you think things will stabilize at? Because we've heard the Vice President say that soon our economy will bounce back. How soon, we don't know.
Right. I mean, soon is relative. If you look at the budget, and if you look at some of the projections, I think we'll have to give ourselves another maybe 2 to 3 years. Because if you look at particularly if you look at the fiscal picture for 2023 and the kind of deficit that the government is staring at, that is one area of concern. And so again, hopefully the IMF program will come in, but even if it comes in, and then when the government fully implements this post-COVID program for economic growth also kicks in, these things don't generate their intended outcomes, or do not produce their intended outcomes overnight. It takes a bit of time. And so for me, ideally, I see a process of another year or two before we start feeling an ease in the pinch points that we've been experiencing.
Right. Let me bring in Dr. Etiahene. Unfortunately, we couldn't hear you earlier. Can you hear me now, Dr. Etiahene?
I can.
Great. Good to have you. I was talking about the banking sector specifically and what all of this means for you in that sector. So we have the tax handle increments. It may not directly affect you, but it affects your business. We have the inflationary rate. We know that the policy rate is going up again. That will also impact the loans that you give out to ordinary folk, including businesses. And then when it comes to our credit ratings, they are sinking even lower. What does this mean to the banking community? And what would it mean in terms of our banking sector cleanup, which we seem not to have completed as of now?
Thank you very much. And to sum it up, we're not going to have it easy, as my earlier speaker said.
Right.
It's going to be very difficult. It's going to be very, very difficult, because everybody is talking, but they haven't taken into consideration the debt restructuring process. That itself can affect the economy so much that we will possibly go into recession. And when you go into recession, it will take a long time for you to come up, especially from outside of the world. Everybody seems that the economy is going to turn. The speaker now has done very well. I think the nearest we can come to a point will be 2 to 3 years. Because if you look at the debt structuring that is going to come in, whether you take debt reduction, debt profile, debt rescheduling, debt swap, meaning that you're reducing the interest and extending the maturity period. All these things will affect cash flow. And the banks and business depends on cash flow. So next year, from where I'm sitting, it's not going to be easy at all, like even what happened to us in the first financial sector reform. This one, it will hit banks. It will affect their capital. And governor said recently that...
You're saying the debt restructuring will affect banks and their capital. How exactly?
Yes. Let me use one example. If we decide to do the haircut,
Dr. Etienne, please hold for me. I'm getting some feedback. I don't know whether it's Dr. Osai Kwapong or someone else. If you're not the one on now, please mute so that we don't get your feedback on. Dr. Etienne, please go ahead.
If you take the haircut, I listened to your program before 8:30. The total bonds which the banks are the whole industry at September 22 was 161.1 billion, excluding 26 billion of treasury bills. And fortunately, the treasury bills are not included in parameters. So for that one, I don't have a challenge. But the banks are holding about 31% of the 161 billion. If you do the MPV, the net present value, and discount it even by even 5%, the magnitude of hitting the banks are very high. Some would have a liquidity challenge. Some are going to have problem with capital. And that is the reason why that everybody seems to be talking about these debt haircut and whatever. But what we haven't actually seen is that people are not coming with figures. People are not working with figures. Fortunately, I have worked with figures in front of me. And even if I assume even 10% of the bank's holding, if I tell you the figure, you ask me, what is going to happen?
Do share. Do share. We need to know these things. Do share with us.
Yes, I use the MPV values and the 10% which the Bretton Woods institution do in doing the net present value. And I tell you, if I do 10% of the haircut, it's 33 billion. 33 billion whole bondholders' losses.
Did you say 33 million? Did you say 33 million or 33 billion? And which currency are we looking at?
I'm talking about cedis. The total bond is 160.1 billion cedis.
Right.
And the banks are holding close to 51 billion. If you do the net present value and you use even 10% to do it, you're going to have a challenge. That's why I'm saying that next year, the banks will not even be able, if we apply these things that we're talking about, will not even have enough liquidity unless Bank of Ghana begins to bail them out. Enough capital. That is why if you read the literature, the IMF has said critically that anytime you're doing this, be very careful about the banks, because the banks will not be able to do business as usual. If you take the debts rescheduling, where you shift the goalpost to the end by not paying people's return, that one too, you're going to hold on to people's interest income. So if you defer the interest, they're not going to get interest. The interest will be part of their cash flow to help the business to work. So whichever way we're going to go next year, I'm not a prophet of a doom, but from where I'm sitting and what I have done so far, it's not going to be easy, and the economy just cannot grow just like that, because it's not, let's put it, it's not going to be easy. But however, if we all agreed, as the first speaker said, if we all agreed and begin to build consensus, where there must be a cut, we must cut it very well, so that we all come together and build it. Maybe 2 years, as he said, or 3 years, the economy will turn around. In countries where they have done it, it's taken some of them 3 years before you turn into recovery. So where I'm sitting, whether you're looking at debt restructuring, debt haircuts, whether you're looking at reprofiling or debt rescheduling, it's not going to be easy next year. Next year, 2023, will not be easy because the banks are going to suffer. Firms and institutions that have bought this money, whichever way you go around it, they're not going to get some of the capital, cash they receive.
Dr. Right, wrap on that point, and let me bring in Prof as well. It's not as what?
It's not as easy as everybody seems to be talking about. Because if you get the numbers, you see, what I like this country is that we are very narrative. We are very narrative. We talk about this, the haircut. But you see, we need to be conceptualize it and apply so that we see the magnitude of the problem.
Right.
So I'm saying that whichever way we go, reprofiling, debt reduction, debt risk scheduling, debt swap, next year is not going to be easy for the financial sector.
Let me bring in Professor Aka, who is with a senior research fellow at ESSA. Every year you come out with data, statistical data on our socioeconomic fabric, looking at everything that is happening, from the tax handles, like I've mentioned. And I'm throwing the same questions to all of you. If you look at the data we have now, Ghana's Eurobonds, for example, have been among the worst performers in emerging markets globally. And when you look at Bloomberg's report, the plans for the local debt recast in September, handing investors losses of almost 12%, part of which Dr. Etiahene alluded to. These are very trying times. What do you feel would be the impact of this if a debt restructuring is done wholesale, like we're seeing it now? What would it mean for the business community, for ordinary Ghanaians in 2023?
Thank you very much, and good morning to the other panels and your cherished listeners. I think Dr. Etiahene and other people who have spoken rightly raised the challenges that we are facing. We acknowledge that these are difficult times. To be sincere with you, we are in a difficult time. But I think when we have crises like that, it gives us an opportunity to rethink and to do things differently. So I don't want us to be unnecessarily alarmed because we have come this way before, and the history behind us can also show us that other countries have also gone through this period. But it depends on what you do, and the kind of policies we have will either aggravate the crisis or will actually give us opportunity to recover quickly and go on to the time of prosperity. Now, given the problems we have, we need to identify and properly diagnose what is the problem. And I hear people saying that government has overborrowed and our debt overhang is too much. I beg to differ. I think I disagree because if you look at the debt to GDP, we are talking about 75% or so. We've gone beyond that. Other countries are in 200%, 100%, and they are not troubled at all.
Yes, but they will quickly tell you that the dynamics, the economic, fiscal dynamics of those countries are very different from ours. Ours are very susceptible to certain shocks, and that's why we are where we are.
Yeah, so that's why we need to look at, so where is the problem? The problem is not the debt. The problem is how to fix the economic dynamics so that we can pay the debt. Basically, that's what it means. The problem is first the composition of the debt. The debt is external and then the domestic. The external debt, traditionally, we used to borrow whenever it was necessary. And then we borrowed from bilateral, multilateral. For some reason, over the last few years, since 2008, especially when President Kufuor went to the international bond market or the capital market, we have seemed to have developed some appetite for going to the international market to borrow. That kind of market is speculative. It's what we call in economics hot money. It's like a man that leaves your wife and go to the street for prostitute. Okay, so these are people who are looking for highest return within the shortest possible time, and they are not interested in giving you money to develop your country. Okay, so that is one of the things we need to decide as we are going through this crisis. Should we come out and go back again to that market? I expect us to have policies that limit the Ministry of Finance and on going to that market unless it's necessary and unless they are borrowing for economic projects that will repay itself. That is dangerous. That's what sent Sri Lanka onto their knees. That's what sent the East Asian countries in the 1990s on their knees, because there will be quick capital reversal. If not that, our debt to GDP is not a problem, but it's because these people now began to withdraw their currencies. We now lost our reserves and we don't have the capacity to repay. So that is one of the issues which we need to address. How do we raise enough export revenue? Export is what we need to be able to pay our foreign debt. So how do we invest in our industries, in our agriculture sector, to be able to reduce our import bill and save some dollars and export the things we produce here and get more revenue so that we can pay our debt? Now look at how much we gain in export in this last 1 year, between January and September. We made exports on our trade account surplus about $1.7 billion. What the IMF is going to give us in total is $3 billion over 3 years or so. Next year, we expect that IMF will allocate about $1.4 billion to us, according to the Ministry of Finance. Now, we could get that from export if we decided even not to go to IMF and we wanted to ramp up our exports. In 1 year, we could have a surplus on our trade worth about $3 billion, and then that can finance, raise our reserves and finance our debt. But since we decided to go to IMF, what do we need to do? This budget needs to have policies that invest in the industrial sector, agro industries, to be able to make sure that the things we are importing, we reduce it and able to export more so that we can have more surplus on the trade account to finance this debts that will be due soon. Now, the other one has to do with the domestic debt. And the domestic debt shouldn't have been a problem if the interest rate was not going up. When the government was borrowing the domestic debt, most of it at the time, the interest rate was around 12.5%, thereabout, the policy rate. Now that it has been hiked to about 27%, it has increased the bill of the government. And that's also another area that we need to look at. How do we have a discussion with the central bank so that the continuous increasing of the interest rate that is making the government bonds, domestic bonds, also expensive, and its services becoming expensive, and that's why this haircut is coming in. That's also a discussion we need to have, how our policy rate will not make domestic borrowing more expensive. But be that is me, I don't think that we need even this haircut at all. I think it's an injustice to perpetrate on the banking sector.
You say we don't need a haircut at all. It's an injustice to perpetrate on the banking sector. But other economists will also tell you we don't really have an option. Our hands are tied. I have had interactions with economists in the past who have said that, like it or not, we'll have to go down this path. Is it a path we can avoid?
Well, I think we can avoid it. And this is my proposal. All over the world, throughout history, the central bank of the nation is a lender of last resort. Whenever there are crises, we don't need to wait till the economy totally contracts and for banks to collapse before the central bank comes in with a bailout.
Right.
The central bank should have enough resources or capacity to create money to save an economy that is going the way of Sri Lanka. We don't want to see political crisis, or we don't want to see this economy on fire or totally destroyed. Then we now want to do something about it. I want you to go through history in other countries. Even when US was fighting war or Britain was fighting war, the central bank is the one that came in with money to buy ammunition and to be able to fight the war. First World War, Second World War, whether it's the Japanese or it's the Europeans or any wars that were fought in history, it was the central bank was called upon to be the lender of last resort. So in this case, for example, if you look at the central bank and their balance sheet, they already have helped a lot. They are actually holding almost about 20% of the government debt. But I'm saying that they can do more. So what I think we can do, for example, if you talk what Dr. Atuahene is saying, for example, that if the banking sector is going to lose about 33 billion if there's a 10% haircut. What I would suggest is that there should not be haircut. There should actually be a debt swap. The central bank must come in to bail out the banks and to swap this debt and pay to the banking sector and assume this debt on their balance sheet. And in that case, there's no haircut. The government will now be owing the central bank more than probably they used to owe, and they will not be owing any commercial bank. And the central bank now can decide to have a reschedule and give the government 20 years to repay, or decide that it write it off its books.
Okay, so
that is a way to save the situation in my humble view.
Okay, so no haircut. Let me take your concluding comments, gentlemen, and I want you to conclude on. We heard Prof. Aka talk about best practices we could employ. Look at Zambia, for example, and what they have done with their own program. They started their debt restructuring. We are not even into it yet. They started even before getting an IMF deal, and now they are doing well. When you look at inflation, when you look at the exchange rate and all of that. Is that the best practice and one of the examples we should follow? What should we be doing moving into 2023? I'll start with you, Dr. Akakpo. So I'm giving each one of you just about a minute and 20 seconds for your concluding thoughts. Dr. Akakpo.
Well, in terms of what we should be doing, as I read the budget, the post-COVID program for economic growth and those 7 pillars, I think it's a very good framework and a good starting point for the government. I think I like the part that talks about aggressive revenue mobilization. I like the part about the restructuring of particularly the state-owned enterprises and trying to ensure viability where it's a drag on the government. What are they going to do about some of those SOEs? So the framework provides for me a good guiding path for the government. I'm looking forward to how they will actually operationalize those seven key pillars and how it gets us out of the challenges that we currently face. I know revenue mobilization is very important, and I know that the government has also hinted at rationalizing expenditure and all of that. I think that would be somewhat also painful to do, but I don't think that you can only rely on just the revenue equation of a budget to put you on a path of fiscal stability. You also have to look at your expenditure, and at some point you may have to do a bit of some deep cutting in those expenditure areas. But when all is said and done, I think that the PCPEG framework that the government has come up with in the budget, and hopefully whatever deal we strike with the IMF will be good to put us on a path of recovery.
Well, let's see how that goes. It's an enterprise we're all involved in. Dr. Kwapong, thank you so much for joining the conversation. Dr. John Osai Kwapong is a CDD fellow. Let me come to Dr. Etuahene on this bit as well. What would be your concluding thoughts in terms of the way forward for us? Which examples do we follow?
I think if I heard Dr. Aka.
Professor Aka, right.
Yeah, he made a very good point about the central bank buying it, but it depends upon the resources they have. Unlike the Bank of England, which recently stepped in to buy government bonds. If your resources are limited, the ideal situation, as I've said and I know before, if they have a lot of resources, that could have been one of the best things that could have happened to the country. But don't forget, they don't also have this type of resources to look at the debt. So, but if they have debt, then the question is that you do that and all these hulu balu will stop. But what I also want to comment or talk about is that I think it has taken us too long a time to talk about domestication. And I'm very glad for the first time that the government is taking it so serious that rice importation costing us 1.5 billion. If we have put measures from 2016 to now, we would have reduced it to the barest minimum. So I think, although it may be tough, but I think it is the step in the right direction. And nobody, I believe, agriculture and agribusinesses should be supported to turn this country around. Other than that, a time will come, we will even import everything and the city will be nowhere. So for me, the one thing that I want to commend them is realizing the domestication and now trying to implement it. And they must do it forthright. Support the agri sector. Find funds. Look at the value chain system of agri. If it's maize, if it's rice, if it's whatever, let us do it. Burkina Faso has done tomatoes. As I'm speaking to you now, they are setting a factory that will process tomatoes for France. Why can't we do it? And I believe this is the step in the right direction. And the government must go all out. Whoever comes or whoever takes over must make sure that agri is a survivor. Not even the minerals. The minerals are just depleting the resources. But agri, we have a competitive and comparative advantage. Let us go, we all get involved. And I believe we'll be able to turn it. History has proved it. Maybe you may not be born that time. When I was in secondary school, a man of no degree, Colonel Achampo, in 74, brought this idea. And that year, Ghana made a lot of gains on agri. Now we have various PhDs, various economics, various people, but we are not improving the value chain in agri. So for me, I take my hat off, but let them not rest on their oars, because that is going to be the survival of this country in the next 10, 20 years. That is what I will say for the time being.
Since you've spoken copiously about agriculture, I'd just like to find out from you, how do you feel Planting for Food and Jobs and 1D, 1F have fared? Now we're saying that we must look at import substitution. We're banning forex to some particular imports and all of that. How do you feel those two have fared in bettering our economy? Because when you look at the data, we're still importing so much. These two, Planting for Food and Jobs and 1D, 1F, seem not to be impacting that sphere. What is your take?
I wouldn't like to comment on it, but I believe they should go back to their champions policy and read it. You see, we have competitive and comparative advantage. And let us take advantage of it. We shouldn't spread our wings doing everything. No, we're not going to succeed. Rice is taking 1.5 billion. Not quite long ago, we have to import maize for the poultry farm. Why do we have to do that? Identify rice, look at the rice people, create the enabling environment, give the value chain system, including machines, seedlings, warehousing, financing. I bet you, Nigerians have done it for rice, and Ghana can do it. I wouldn't like to comment on what other people have done, because if you want to comment, then you become an enemy of the system. But I will say, let us look at our capabilities and strength. Rice, maize, we can support the poultry farm. Unfortunately, we import about 500 million worth of poultry into this country. Can't we produce it? Ivorians do it. Why can't we do it? So for me, I won't comment on it, but let us adopt what Achampon did and study it very well, and then modify it so that we will not seem to be going here and there as if we want to do all things. But if you do all things, if you want to try to do all things, you will not be able to make impact. Let us identify a few: rice, maize.
Doc,
and even preservation of plantain and yam. I would have thought by this time, Ghana would have been able to have a preservation of the currently plantain is all over the place. But as we go into January, you try and see, you see the price. At least let us, our scientists, give them encouragement and let them do that. Farmers will go in and do it. People go to cocoa farm. My father was a cocoa farmer. He went in because he had a secure price. All the time there's a secure price, a secure market. So for me, that is what I will talk about just a little.
I just wanted, you said something that got me curious. Are you saying that even for you technical people, when you speak, there's some muzzling that when you pass certain comments, the system comes after you? Is that what you're suggesting? For which reason you don't want to comment on certain things?
It is true. The system has been coming after me. But you see, it is God who has strengthened me. And I will speak the truth until the day I put my hands on my chest and go to grave. I will not be afraid of anybody because it is God that has given me this type of knowledge. And I wouldn't like anybody. They have been intimidated. Let me tell you. But for me, I will continue to do what I do.
You've been intimidated by whom?
I won't like to disclose. Those who are doing it know it. As I'm speaking to you today, let me assure you, people have been paid to listen to me, whether I'll make comment against certain people. As I'm speaking to you, yesterday, the discussions we have about the policy rate and what, I got all the calls from all the place. But you see, we are a Ghanaian. I am a Ghanaian, born, fully fledged Ghanaian. If the economy is good, I enjoy the benefit, especially when I'm a pensioner. When inflation is eating my little pension, and I talk about inflation and currency depreciation, they said you are the enemy of this. I can't keep quiet. No. I will speak. Let them think about me. Let them think and plan about me. And the God who is in me will sustain me, and victory will be mine.
Doc, we're grateful that you took the time to join us this morning. It's been refreshing, and we pray that all of these people, at least they will follow the logic in what you're saying rather than anything else. We're grateful, Doc, for your time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Let me now come to Professor Aka. And before I take your concluding comments, I just want to find out from you. You made mention of the fact that we had been here before as a country. I just want you to go back a bit and explain to us when we had been here before. Because if you look at the Fourth Republic, for example, if you look at our exchange rate, we've never got here before. If you look at our debt burden, we've never hit, this tune of debt before. We're looking at around 450 billion from what the finance minister told us the last time, about 330 billion added on within the last 6 years, within this administration. You look at the inflationary rate, 40.4% and the rest. So do explain to me, before we get to your concluding comments, how and when did we ever get here?
Well, if you go to our history, the most recent one is to find out how was Busia overthrown as a Prime Minister of Ghana. And you will know that it was the same debt, external borrowing, that had consumed the whole nation. We had a very serious debt overhang. And when Busia's government came in, we went all over the world trying to look for a bailout. It's the IMF that came. The same IMF, was proposing to Busia to implement austerity measures, the kind of things we are seeing, high taxes, stopping government spending, recruitment, employment, and prison a freeze on wages here and there. And there was demonstration all over the place. That's what eventually pushed Busia away. We've had this kind of histories before. The most recent one was the Dumso. When we had a Dumso for 5 years, we almost did nothing about it. We seem to think that we can allow crisis to go away by itself. The Dumso, I published a paper, and the Dumso, each year that we had Dumso, Ghana was losing about 3 billion. So over the period, we were losing about 686 million US dollars. Over the 4-5 years that we had Dumso, we lost a lot of money that was enough to have built a new refinery. So if our problem was
a new refinery of what? Oil?
Yes, a total oil refinery. We could have built Tor all over again afresh. And since we have oil, for example, even now that we are discussing, one of our biggest problem is the importation of oil, crude, and then processed refined petroleum products. And if you ask that government should invest in Tor, they will say there's no money. And some economists and some politicians will say, no, government should cut down on its expenditure. But If I was to advise government, I would have asked government to make sure that just like we are talking, every oil, crude that we are producing here must not leave the shores of Ghana. It must be processed here. And if it will require government, if we cannot have a private sector to invest in an oil refinery, it is nothing wrong for the government himself to build a refinery, to support a refinery here where we can produce our processed petroleum products here. And if you add that to the Ghana gas, we would have solved one of our biggest problems where we lose a lot of dollars because of that. But there are people who think that, well, government, leave it for the market, government doesn't have money, and it should not go into, like Dr. Tiahin was saying, the central bank can never run out of money. There's no central bank in the world that doesn't have money. The central bank can only run out of external reserves because we don't produce dollars. So we can run out of our reserves. But no central bank can run out of its local currency as a sovereign central bank. It's an ideological decision. It's a political decision. It's something that we decide that we don't want central bank to print money. If that's what we have decided, no problem. But otherwise, there's no central bank that can run out of its own local currency. And if it's going to use that local currency to do an economic project, to invest in a toll or in agriculture, I don't see what is the problem about it. I don't see how it causes inflation. One of the things that is causing inflation here is because of food. Food prices are going up and we are importing a lot of food. So if the central bank could support agriculture industrialization to produce the food we eat here, how should that cause inflation? It should rather bring inflation down because the prices are going to go down. So we have had these ideological, philosophical discussions about the role of the central bank and the issue about creating money and printing money. But it's not as if central bank is powerless and can run out of its own resources. It doesn't have. But I think I want to support, as I conclude, what Dr. Tiahene was saying. And I want us to honestly face this problem. There is no way Ghana is going to prosper or develop to become a high-income country if we neglect agriculture. It's because we neglected agriculture for all these years. That's where we are now. That services seems to be the one driving the economy, and services does not develop a country. It does not create the necessary jobs and the feedback and to be able to raise the productivity in the other sectors. So every country, Britain, US, Japan, Malaysia, South Korea, every country that has developed to become a rich country, they first, as of first importance, focused on agriculture. And it had all the state resources, all the state financing, all the state research and technology development was backing agriculture. And when agriculture developed and modernized, then labor was released onto manufacturing, and then the service sector also picked up. We have failed to do that. Agriculture, we still have hoe and cutlasses, we still have lack of irrigation, lack of modernized technology and other things. You can get to, I was driving last week, I got to Akumada. Just like Dr. Tiahin was saying, Burkina Faso has invested in tomatoes. Almost every household in Akumada is a tomato household, growing household. A lot of tomatoes are there. Very cheap, but there's almost no government support. There's almost no industry to help process it into tomato paste. And the prices, by the time it gets to Accra, you cannot buy it. Onions now, we are importing them from Burkina and Niger. All of those kind of things. So I think that since tomorrow is a Farmers' Day, I think we need to invest in agriculture. But when I look at the budget, the amount of money being located to agriculture, about 2 billion Ghana cedi, is woefully inadequate. We need, by my own estimations, to spend at least 7 to 10% of our GDP on agriculture annually for the next 5 years if you're going to break forth into prosperity. And that 7 to 10%, you're talking about 40 to 50 billion Ghana cedi must be invested. Government must look for that resources to spend about 40 to 50 billion Ghana cedi each year in the agriculture sector alone for the next 3 to 5 years, and everything will change. There will be enough food, farmers will become rich, there will be a lot of savings, and there will be a lot of productivity, and then it will raise the other sector, which will be the manufacturing, agro-based industrialization, and that will lead to our prosperity. If we still keep 1 billion, 2 billion into agriculture, planning for food and jobs, very good philosophy, but there's no financing that is actually being put there. 2 billion is not going to do the trick. It's not going to do the magic. And I think that if we take agri seriously, we are going to see that everything is going to change. If we fail to invest in agriculture and agriculture stagnates, the whole economy will stagnate.
Just a quick follow-up on the bit about agriculture. I don't know whether it's not adding up or whether we are not seeing something, because people have complained about the prices of products. But if you listen to the agri minister, for example, who recently said that the agricultural sector grew by 4.7% in 2019, then it went up to 7.4% in 2020, and now when we look at 2021, it rose even further to 8.4%. We seem incrementally to be doing well, but is that reflective of what we are seeing in terms of the prices of foodstuffs, the prices of products on the market, or accessibility? Where are we getting it wrong, do you think?
Yeah, so I think, fine, agri sector has been growing, but sometimes you have to look at the sources of the growth and the level at which we are growing. So if you have 1 cedi and you grow by even 100%, it becomes 2 cedi. Okay, so it's quite low that it needs to grow massively above 8-10% for us to have significant impact. But also the growth is mainly sometimes driven by cocoa sector single-handedly. Okay, so the cocoa sector is not the key. It's not the agri sector we are talking about. We are talking mainly about food production, crops, and that one is not really doing massively well. But also the other problem is that Dr. Tiahine said it, because we have not linked the agriculture sector to processing, preservation, and to the market. So you see that sometimes the growth is in the rural sector, and then it's seasonal. So it doesn't propagate throughout the whole economy, and it's not even throughout the whole year. So it's not something that is sustainable. So what we need to do is to invest in the rural economy, which will require infrastructure. It requires science and technology, research. It requires financing, and it requires a link to the market to make sure that there is a market for the goods that are produced, so that when they produce it, it doesn't become a glut and then they sell it cheaply and then everything gets rotten and then they go back to poverty. So there's a whole, I think, comprehensive planning that we need to look at. And I think he talked about looking at Champon's policy, by looking at some of the policies the other countries. I would recommend one country for you, for example. You can go to Malaysia. Malaysia picked oil palm and rubber. We have rubber here. If you go to the western region, from Agunan Kwanta all the way to my village in Nzema, people plant rubber. We have oil palm and we have coconut. What have we done with it? Malaysia is now the largest exporter of palm oil throughout the whole world. And they have built industries to use palm oil and the whole produce from the oil palm to produce soap and manufacturing and other things that are needed. We have not done that. So we have not, even if you have oil palm here, when you produce it, what are you doing with it? We are still importing oil into this country, including even palm oil. So those are the kind of things we need to do and link the agri to the market and to the industry and to processing so that there will be value addition. And then we can even export now with the AFTA, we can export to the sub-region and even export some of them abroad.
Prof, we're very grateful that you joined us for this conversation. Professor Aka is with ISA, and he also joined the conversation. So we had at different times joining the conversation, we had Dr. John Osai-Kwapong, a CDD fellow. We also had Dr. Etiahene, Dr. Richmond Etiahene, a banking consultant. We also had Professor Charles Aka, whom you just heard, senior research fellow at ISA. And at a point, we had Dr. Joseph Obeng, president of GUTA, together with Seth Chum Akabwa, CEO of the Association of Ghana Industries. That is how we wrap this end of the conversation. But we have a lot more coming your way. Bernice Abubeidu Lanza is out and about. We have a lot to talk about on the back of the latest dynamics from the telcos. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
In June this year, the boundary commissions of Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire jointly held activities from the 7th to the 10th of June to commemorate African Border Day. The joint celebration was part of efforts to strengthen the relationship between the boundary commissions of the two countries. The day was also used to observe the Green Ghana Day. A second meeting was held in Abidjan from the 23rd to the 25th August. The joint technical meeting in Accra from the 29th November to the 1st December is to, among others, review and validate operating documents for the joint Ghana-Cote d'Ivoire Technical Committee, as well as the sub-committees working on the implementation of the ITLOS ruling in 2017. National Coordinator of the Ghana Boundary Commission, Major General Yumanokotia, says the meeting is a follow-up of the inaugural meeting in Abidjan, where a conversation on how to affirm the land borders of the two countries and implementation of the ITLOS ruling.
This meeting is a follow-up of the inaugural meeting in Abidjan, where we started a conversation on how to be able to reaffirm our land boundaries and to make a follow-up on the ITLOS ruling so far as our maritime boundary is concerned. In this meeting, we are aiming to come out with a framework that will guide us in the implementation of the ITLOS ruling. On land boundaries, we are hoping that we will come out with ideas in which we should be able to reaffirm all land boundaries within the next 5 years. So that is clearly the key objective so far this meeting is concerned. In addition, the two boundary commissions have realized that we have some river bodies that serve as common boundary between Ghana and Togo. Now, there have been a lot of illegal mining going along those roads, so we want to also facilitate our security agencies from both sides to intervene in stopping this illegal mining that is going on, because it is helping one to distract the water bodies, which is providing drinking water to communities along the boundaries.
Deputy Minister of Lands and Natural Resources in charge of Lands and Forestry, Benito Usubiu, says he's optimistic the ongoing joint technical meeting between the Ghana Boundary Commission and the Cote d'Ivoire Boundary Commission will be able to develop an action plan for the implementation of the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea ITLOS ruling.
We have the boundary pillars along our land boundaries. There are some of them that are old, some which have been through weather and other human activity are misplaced. There's the need for us to jointly make sure that we collaborate to bring them back and position them on the exact locations where they used to be.
He also stated the two countries are collaborating to completely eliminate illegal mining, which is polluting water bodies in some border communities.
Today's mention of galamsey or illegal mining has to do with where we have mining illegally on the water bodies, especially rivers like the Tano and the Bia, which flows in between the two countries. Yes, the devastating effects of the rivers affect both countries. The river flows downstream into La Côte d'Ivoire and upstream from Ghana. Yes, they've also voiced out their concern, just like us in Ghana. We are also not happy, and we are making sure that we would be able to address the issue of illegal mining, especially on the river bodies. You are aware, as we speak now, river guards have been trained. The government has procured speedboats, and soon they are going to start operation and monitoring of the river bodies.
Speaking through a translator, the Executive Secretary of the Cote d'Ivoire Boundary Commission, Diakalidia Konate, said his country is sensitizing its people about the devastating effects of illegal mining. He's optimistic the joint technical meeting will also help with long-lasting solutions to the problem.
So basically, the joint technical committee is going to work, and they'll come out with framework agreements, and then they'll also come out with the work plan for the work that the joint committee will do, and then so that in the next couple of years, that's what's going to guide the work of the joint the committee.
AM show. Announced before we embarked on that break, we spoke about telcos and the deactivation of some categories of SIM cards. Are you affected? Are you going to be affected? Are you likely to be affected? And what will the implications be? Well, my colleague Bernice Abubedu-Lanza is standing by at the Ring Road office of MTN. She connects with us. Bernice, what exactly is happening there? Paint a picture for us.
Of the telcos chamber that MTN, Vodafone and Airtel Tigo began implementing the directive by the Ministry of Communications contained in a letter dated 11th of November 2022. So we're here to assess the impact of this SIM card blockage. You will remember, or you may recall, that on the 20th of November, they began the gradual deactivation of certain services like data, phone calls. But this time, if your SIM card is blocked, you are not accessing any service, including emergency services. And that tells you how terrible this blockage is. So we are here to find out from some of the clients who are here today how this has affected them and why they have waited this long before coming to register for their SIM cards. I'm told by those who work here that on a typical day you won't see this particular number of people gathered here, and they assume it's because of the blockage that started yesterday. Good morning, Pache Efrausing.
From Kwabna.
Now, at the end of MTN office, I'm pay.
I'm Baba by Matric and Rame Bahanamo from Anopa Kusia Numreno, Nina network, and Anope Masiaba. I was here before they came, but still they haven't even completed 1%.
But yes, we started this process a very long time ago. Yes, Ms. Remy Bisa, and then I want what to this point here. I started blocking some cards and I will be complete registration. No?
Yeah, me obey only penaka so completing. Recently, I made a message, and I'm messaging so Tama now quite money a day because of a Juman Tinamina Quine and Conco. And now you answer about so Tambia baby network, baby network, even crab before crash and crab. Last 3 months, I'm here. I'm a bahan every day. Be a network, baby a network. I'm a coffee, baby a network. It's a network problem now until I'm up to now. Me and complete here.
So this gentleman tells me it's not a case of he being irresponsible per se or just deciding to stay at home and not register until this point. In fact, he says that he's been here a couple of times and he's encountered network issues. Even yesterday he was here and due to network issues he was unable to register. He says another person registered for him. Also mobile money agents. Okay, so he did the registration the first time with a mobile money agent. He was told that the process had ended, but well, here he is today affected by this situation. Let me speak to this gentleman as well and find out what exactly is bringing him here. Good morning, sir. Welcome to JoyNews. Please, what's your name?
Ebenezer.
Ebenezer, why are you here this morning?
I'm come to register my SIM. Okay. My internet is not working, I'm come to work on it.
All right. Didn't you know that your SIM or your internet will be cut off if you hadn't fully registered, and why are you waiting till now to do so?
I've already registered it, I've done everything for it, but I do not know that they will cancel or do something like that. So as I put my SIM inside the phone, the internet is not ready. They say I should fill the full registration. Okay. So I did not know. That's why I don't know. But the other ones that I've already done everything.
Okay. So this one you've not done the biometric?
Yeah, this one I've not. But I've registered it already, but I've not do the completed registration.
So you didn't hear in the news that they were going to block?
I have time to watch TV and this thing. That's
Thank you for talking to us, Ebenezer. But I mean, where would you have been on a typical day, and how is this affecting you?
Oh, it's affecting me, but I have to take it as a normal thing. It's happy. So
how long have you been here this morning?
Oh, around 6.
Why have you not been attended to? Have you been told why?
The network is bad, so we should wait small.
So that's another gentleman who stayed here for quite some time due to network issues. Now, if you follow me, you'd realize that the queue doesn't just end here. It goes all the way to that side, all the way to the back, and there are people who are encountering different challenges. Earlier, I met a gentleman and his mother who say they are Cameroonians and they had registered with their passport. What is happening is that they received a message, according to him, that his number had been registered, and I asked him if he didn't know he had to use the Ghana card, and he said in fact he just got his Ghana card this week, but his number has been blocked. I think he just left the queue because I can't find him. Let me try and see if I can speak to a few more people to find out from them the impact of this directive on them. Good morning, Patrick Felsen. Na me patrol anope den na de wa ba ha. So this gentleman says that his WhatsApp services aren't working. As you may be aware, you need data to use WhatsApp. Now me patrol na wonim say enra, which is 30th November. Na buying an Ministry of Communications aka so more register mo SIM cards in I am block his anyama we ni na.
Na me but be mo na me wo kwan mo.
Who your driver? And now why and then I wash re ejuma bi kwana bibisa. This gentleman says he's a driver. He actually knew of the directive from the Ministry of Communications, but says he was on the road working, so there was no way he could actually make time to register his SIM. And today is his day off, and that's how he's able to do so. Let me find out if I can speak to a few people. Hello, sir. Good morning.
Mohammed.
Mohammed. Na anope den edo wabaha.
Pacho mi SIM no. Omugusu send message say me register. Until first me decline by na omo say omo njindi say ebe ye na enye omo ji mi aso me say obi o ma register. Until actually me ko o station omo register ko nchen ho. Me ko o ma register enso enye juma na nsa e wo ma na me WhatsApp line na akate. Until na anura ma batena asa ba say 3 o'clock. Na me san ko e. Ti anapo ya ja me san ba ha bio.
Me patrol omo nkwanche na wo ka no omo fa wonsa
family sa actually phone say touch na omo kita no omo say o ma register nti tembia omo gusu say ni message say me same no ma register e record then on batwa nti na ma sa ba han
na one nim short code na ye de check say why you fully registered na
me de ba han obi check here na am buy.
Right. So Mohammed is also a victim of what I may want to refer to as roadside registration people, if there's anything like that. But these persons are basically not in the offices. Some of them are mobile money agents who offer registration services. Okay, so they did it for him for free, but the unfortunate thing is that he's still not registered. Okay, so this gentleman is actually telling me something. We need to go back to him. One so one on the register ma ojusika.
Okay,
so these people I refer to as roadside registration officers, for lack of a better expression, actually sometimes, according to this man's story, will charge you for doing it. Now,
fingerprints. So almost say about me checking soon about and do an
checking and what did that number be checking?
Me check it 400 as star 400 as. Oh, senior.
All right, so it's just some interesting revelations we are getting here of people taking advantage of the situation to swindle others who may not have had the time to register, and so they're going to them in their various localities. And this man is a victim here. He says that he actually paid. What you are saying? He paid 10 cedis to get registered, and unfortunately he finds himself back here because the registration didn't happen. Inti me pacho ejuma be na wo ye na and now so ba 3 p.m. You came here at 3 p.m. yesterday. Almost network issues and no pay so what's hamba. Ejuma be na wo ye then I was shre as what's in ha.
Me gardener Accra Digital Center na me wo.
Na se mra o de te ha no e den na wo shre.
Anapan me sorry ntem ejuma kakra ansa me ba ha. Inti mi pese sanda eba yana matima ali sam no. Timi Ghana Accra Digital Center.
Okay, so Mohammed is a gardener. He says that he woke up quite early today to do some work so that he will not lose out entirely and be unproductive today. But he tells me that he's been sitting here since morning, came at 3 p.m. yesterday, and he still hasn't gotten his card registered. I'll just try and speak to a few people because it's interesting the kind of stories we are hearing even about people paying to have their SIMs registered. Good morning, Daddy. Good morning. What's your name?
My name is Victor.
Okay. Why are you here today?
They have tainted my mobile money, and so I'm going to change my code.
Okay, so you've registered your SIM. You have a different issue. Okay, all right. So he is not one of those affected by the blocking of the SIM numbers, and so let me just find out if there are any other people who are encountering same. Good morning, sir. What's your name? Okay. Hello. You're from saying?
I don't understand the language.
Okay, why are you here today?
I'm here today. They have logged this in my the data, this in WhatsApp. Okay. It's not coming. And they are continuing giving message that I didn't register my this SIM for. I'm here to register it.
So why have you waited till now to register your SIM?
Because of network.
How long have you been coming here, and just explain to us what you mean by network?
It has been a long time.
When was the last time you came here?
12 November 2001, 2002.
You came to sit here and you were not registered or attended to?
Yes. I have been here. I have not yet registered.
So it appears there seems to be a challenge with the network. Unfortunately, the workers here aren't allowed to speak to us. So all we can gather is from what the clients or the customers tell us. Let me see if this lady will speak to me. Good morning, madam. Me who saw the Ghana card now to so na me pacho e den problem na e de wabaha no pay. Oh, you are a worker here. Okay, so she's also a worker here. Let me see if mommy will talk to us and explain to us why she's also here. Good morning, ma. Me pacho ite saying.
Yeah.
No pay.
Oh, me SIM card ninti na me ba register wa hadada. O ma ya me bibia wa hadada. Me wo na menya message say me dia na emba. Ele ndo aton esan ba ha. Network na nya djuma fa no pass ya transfer 5. We no djuma fo nyina na epon coffee. Na esan ba no pa we still the network na nya djuma.
Me pacho o se omo ye bibia ma omo je won nsa no so.
Ma chop picture ni nyina me dimi nsa to de no so ni nyina. Fi the meeting message ni say emba enti mi nsa enti ma lock me WhatsApp ni nyina.
Put me your call.
And for the minimum sister your call, but minimum say the match I don't know.
What's your first saying?
Fidelia.
Okay, so for Fidelia here, she says she's done everything, and she did it right here at this office. They took her biometrics, they took her photograph, but she received a message that her number will be blocked because she's not completed her registration. I was finding out from her what kind of services she can't access. She says data, WhatsApp, but she was able to make a phone call today. Into Omubai and Omutricho Munientia, Omajo fingerprints, a picture, but still I ain't registered. Omutricho Mutrel.
Yeah, me standing in our house. My yelling in our house, and to my pictures made me sent to any in our soup. And to me, say, baby, I okay. And you mean, come in, me couldn't buy, me couldn't ba. Median and buy this my message, but I mean, who phone to say. And my kind, so my blocking me, were cheap and my WhatsApp.
And I mean, besides, Oman church or Musisi, I also wouldn't know by Okunudia number, what their number, but Oman more explanation, me and it.
I will have a casabi biachero. Your bathroom door, Bianca, which I say, Frona, network and so and back.
Benjamin, is really getting interesting, the kind of stories we're hearing here. So Fidelia says she registered with her husband right here. Her husband has been fully registered, but she's received a message that she needs to complete her registration. She was here yesterday. She spent the whole day here. She's here today as well. and she's yet to be attended to because of network issues. Well, we will need the telcos to respond to these concerns. One, about persons who claim they've fully registered in their offices but are yet receiving messages of non-registration, or those who are saying that they've been here for days and there are still network issues. And I don't know for you at home, we're told the short code to check for your status in terms of registration is *400#. I'm just trying that right here on my phone to see what message pops up. I have fully registered. Okay, so my name is here, my ID is here, and then the B cup says yes. That is what indicates that you're fully registered. Okay, my national ID card on television. All right, so those are just by way of cross-checking, because like we're hearing now, there are people who are victims of a certain sort of fraud that is happening. People taking advantage of this, charging people, claiming to register them only to realize that they've not been registered. So here's what you can do this morning. *400#, cross-check the last part of the message, B cup. If it's a yes, it means you've been fully registered. But some people can also take advantage of the self-registration app, because that's how I registered. And let me just find out from some of them if they are aware of it. Me patcho munim say app bi wo hwa wa obetumi download their registration. Oh, I'm sorry. His phone is a yam, so you can tell clearly the frustration. But hello, Ebenezer, can I speak to you again? Are you aware that there's a self-service app you can use? You can download an app that you can use. Because that's what I used at home. I registered myself at home. Okay, so well, that's another thing.
Because of my brother, which I give my SIM to him, so I don't know anything. So yesterday he informed me.
All right. So that's another thing, Benjamin. It appears that we may.
And they said they should continue. They said no, so they have to do it.
So he has to do the biometrics because his brother is using his SIM, and obviously he cannot use his biometrics for another person or his own number. So Benjamin, I think another thing we need to do is to try and bring back the use of the self-service app. It could help people reduce the time they spend in these offices trying to get their SIMs registered. So that's the story here from the Ring Road Central MTN office. We've sampled a couple of concerns from the clients here. They are varied, but it's all down to the fact that their data services especially are being cut. So if you're one of those who has not fully registered, the Telecoms Chamber tells us that this is only affecting those who have done the first part of the registration and not captured their biometrics. So if you haven't done the registration at all because you don't have a Ghana card, you're not going to be affected by this. But if you've done the first part of your registration, kindly find a way of completing it so that your data services, your SMS services, your call services, and most importantly, emergency services are not cut off. Back to you in the studio, Benjamin.
Well, thank you very much, Bernice, my colleague Bernice Abubedu-Lansa, all the way from the Ring Road office of MTN, bringing us details there, and some of those people clearly distraught. Well, we'll take a breather here, and when we return, we shall activate the phone lines and take some of your social media reactions. We've put out some stories there asking you to share your thoughts on them. For example, the tolls that are due to return in 2023. You have had quite a take. We'll be looking at that and other issues to do with our economy and even SIM card re-registration. All those thoughts you get to share with us after the break. Welcome back on the AM show. We'll be taking your comments shortly to allow you to share with us what it is that you have to say, both via social media. A lot of you have been commenting on the toll booth situation and other discussions. But before we go there, on the back of the discussion to do with the blocking or deactivation of SIM cards, we have joining the conversation Mrs. Nana Defi Bedu, and she is Director of Consumer and Corporate Affairs with the National Communications Authority. Mrs. Bedu, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining the conversation.
Good morning, and thank you for having me here this morning.
It's a pleasure. So we've had different figures mentioned, 5.7 million, 9 point something million. We also know that with this specific exercise, it is not those who do not have a Ghana card at all. They've been, set aside because they don't even have a card to register. But those who have completed phase 1 of the registration but have not gone ahead with the biometric registration who are affected. But what is the breakdown actually, and what can we expect in the coming days?
Okay, so yes, the figures keep changing, as you have rightly said, because first of all, I think one of the figures you mentioned was for a particular service provider, and the other figure you mentioned was the aggregate of all the figures put together. But what is happening is that, if you recall, on the 11th of November, there was a directive from the Ministry of Communications which sought to put certain things in place. And what the directive sought to do was that, yes, we acknowledge the fact that some people have not been able to get their Ghana cards, and so they cannot register their SIM cards. And again, it also touched on those who have their Ghana cards and had begun the registration process but had not completed the process. So the directive that was given was simply that for those who didn't have their Ghana cards and had not been able to register their SIM cards, those people would be exempt from any punitive measures pending the NIA giving them their Ghana cards. Now, the second aspect of this was that for those who had their Ghana cards and had actually begun the registration, that they had done their stage 1 where they had linked the Ghana cards to their SIM card via *404, those people would, from the 20th of November, would have their SIMs barred from data services. And that is what happened, and that went on over a period of 3 days because we couldn't, or the MNOs could not do a block of all those numbers at once. So it went on over a period of 3 days. Now, after that had gone on, we've actually seen an increase in the uptake of people who have done the stage 1 and we're now doing stage 2. So we've seen that increase in the database as well. The last thing is that for those who have not done the stage 2 and who had their data barred, those people are from today going to be blocked, and it's going to be over a 3-day period. So if you are in that category and you have not been blocked from the network, it is notable to know that within the next 2 days you would also be blocked. But then again, let me just quickly clarify this. We also acknowledge that there are some people who actually did the stage 1 where they linked their Ghana cards to the SIM cards. But unfortunately, after doing that, their Ghana cards were either lost, damaged, or through some fault of theirs, and they could not proceed to do the stage 2. So for these people, they were actually asked that they should engage the NCA by calling our toll-free number. After we do an investigation and verify the issues, these people would also be put on the exclusion list, pending them getting their Ghana cards reissued to them. So in a nutshell, that is what is going on with regards to the SIM registration.
How long is this exercise going to go on for? Are they in phases, or are you, targeting all of these people all at once?
Like I said earlier on, I mentioned that the affected people would be disconnected, or the SIM cards will be disconnected from the network over a period of 3 days.
Right. Well, I guess the grace periods are over, and if you fall into the affected categories, then that is going to be the situation there. Mrs. Nana Defi Bedu is Director, Consumer and Corporate Resources at the NCA. Thank you so much for your time with us this morning.
Thank you very much.
Okie doke. So this is how we set the tone for our interactions with you, social media, and then your calls. At the right time, we will take what you had to share with us on social media. But now let's settle for some of your calls. You know the number to call, 0302 211 691. 0302 211 691. We'll take your calls after the break. Thank you for staying with us on the AM show. We'll be taking your thoughts shortly, but before we do that, we'll just acknowledge some of those who make this show possible. Also joining me in the studio, Bernice Abubedo-Lanza. She's back from the field.
Yes,
it was interesting out there at the Ring Road office.
Yes, and very revealing, you know, some of the concerns that were raised, and I'm glad that we had
the
rep from the
NCA
NCA to respond to some of those.
Right. So interesting. We'll get into those dynamics as we move the conversation forward. But water is life. It regulates your body temperature. It keeps you alive and kicking. Awake is premium purified water treated through a strict purification process to ensure that every bottle on the market refreshes you better. We have the perfect sizes for all occasions. 330 500 ml bottles to fit your pockets and bags, 750 ml for the heavy drinkers, and 1.5 liters for those who always want more. We've also introduced our special 19-liter jars for offices and homes. Now, all you need to do is stay awake with Awake Purified Drinking Water wherever you go. So come on, grab a bottle of Awake Water and get quality hydration. Awake Purified Drinking Water, one for life. Remember, for every bottle you purchase, an amount is donated to the National Cardiothoracic Center. Now, isn't that heartwarming? It's produced by Casapreco. For bulk purchases, call 0262 351 251. This advert is FDA approved.
And you can also buy your 3-month or 12-month HD Plus subscription on your HD Plus decoder this football season and dial *844 *8# to enter the HD Plus or Rekodo Double promo. There are 1,700 rewards to be won, including trips for 3 couples to Dubai in December, a 65-inch TV, and more, household appliances, etc. Promo is valid from now till the 5th of December 2022, so take advantage of that. 5th December is a few days away. We've already entered December, Benjamin. And finally, the most loved and exciting kids cooking show on Joy Prime, Big Chef, is finally coming to an end as we journey to the finale. Contestants have displayed their exceptional culinary skills in the last 11 weeks of the competition. We started with 14. Now we are down to the big 6: Adjoa, Ama, Fidelia, Aram, Prince, and Laura. Vote for your favorite by dialing *711 *60# and follow the prompt. Who wins Big Chef Season 2? Well, remember, your vote makes 40%, so vote as many times as you can. Catch the finale of Big Chef on Sunday, the 4th of December 2022 at 5 p.m. on Joy Prime. Big Chef is kindly brought to you by Fortune Rice, Frytol Sunflower Oil, Indomie, Top Choco, Flora Tissues, Low Price Masters, Sankofa Natural Spices, City Blood Tonic, and Perk Biscuits.
Righto, so let's get right down to it, and we're going to be taking some of your thoughts on social media. Starting, I would like us to talk about the deactivation of SIM cards and whether you're affected, what you think about it. But let's start with the road tolls, Bernice. They are back in 2023.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So the minority in Parliament says that we agree with you. We told you in the first place that this was just popular.
It wasn't going to work.
So we are going to accept it just on the basis that you would agree that every amount would just be for road maintenance. Everything gotten from road tolls should directly be linked to road, or else we are not a part of this. But let's see what you have to say. You who has to pay from your pockets, you who is the victim of all of this. One that says failed people, in fact, the one who fronted I'm sure he's trying to say, right? The one who led the stoppage.
Yeah.
Right, okay, must be prosecuted.
I think he's referring to the roads minister.
But you even remember the whole controversy around this. I mean, the finance minister saying it's in the budget, then it taking effect, and Parliament saying, no, we need to debate.
The finance minister didn't make it sound as though it was taking imminent or immediate effect.
Exactly.
Then, before we could say, Jack, the roads minister
Exactly. Well, we have a caller, Joseph from Kumasi. Hello, Joseph. Good morning to you. Let's hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, good morning. Bernice and Ben, it appears that our country, our leaders, they are simply not on top of their issues. You see, we have just taken off the road tolls, and then we heard that, the subsequent road tolls we are going to get, they are going to only put road tolls on projects so that they can pay for themselves. So it's not going to be all roads. Then we wake up the next day, it's a different ball game altogether. Our problem is that we do not allow the technocrats to think for this country. That is the biggest problem we have as a country. And consistently, we have had this problem. And we do not want to do anything about it as a country. Consistently. Look at what is happening in the budgets now. Now, we live in a country where even our money that we have put on the bank, when you go for them, they are telling you a different story. You can't even get your investment back. Now, look, the last address of the president, he gave us brilliant ideas as to what we need to do as a nation. Former John Mahama also gave us brilliant ideas. As a matter of fact, they were both similar to the things that we need to do as a country to develop. But I asked a very simple question. John Mahama had 4 years to be a president and almost 4 years as a vice president. Akufo-Addo has also been in power for about 6 years. Do they want to tell us that they didn't know these things they spoke about recently? It is sad for this country.
Right.
Now what has happened, the only thing that is going to happen is that maybe Ghanaians will vote out the MPP and bring back the NDC, which will continue the problems that we already have. It's a sad day.
We appreciate your time here this morning. That's Joseph from Kumasi. And just by way of clarification, Benjamin, we heard about the reintroduction of road tolls. What he's talking about was going to be private-public sponsored roads between government and the private sector. Here again, the minister, finance minister, in addressing Parliament said it will be on selected roads, okay?
Yeah,
so we just
I remember that.
Yeah, we just need to put that just out there so that people understand what is happening. If you're someone who just wants more details, you can go to paragraph 462 of the budget and get more details on that. We have Nana Kwesi from Dansoman. Hello, Nana, let's hear you.
Yes, good morning to you all. You see, my issue with Ghana is that it's very interesting how we live in this country. The politicians are taking over. They're running things the way they want because of what will benefit. See, the road tools were giving us money. I always think the Minister of Road should be sitting down with the Minister of Agriculture. Where are we going to get this food from? Focus on those angles. You were making over 400 million from road tolls. Do you know how many roads can be done from this 400 million? Do you know how many roads from the places where we get foods, all the roads can be fixed? This food shortage issue can be solved. Then you close road tolls and say you are going to do toilets over there. Are you serious? Is this country really serious? The power must be taken from these people, and there must be a different group of people that are separate, not government appointees. People that are just made to plan and sit down for the country, not people that the government will put there. You're taking road tolls and look at today. Look at the issue at Kaswa. The Kaswa toll booth. Still, when it rains, there's a problem over there. Nobody has gone to solve the problem. You're taking the road, you are bringing it back. Do you know what is going to happen? You are increasing taxes. You are now bringing road toll back again. The people are going to go and back and fight it. It's kind of serious. The minister must sit down and think. They should stop partisans. Look, these days, nobody stands in parliament and says, God bless Ghana. When they are done, they talk about the party. When they are done is NDP. When they are done is NDC. So nobody talks about anything about Ghana.
Right.
It's about what they feel comfortable for themselves. That's what they do.
Nana
Minister
Kwesi.
of Agri should sit down with Minister of Road and think.
Right.
The two of them must think.
Thank you, Nana, for those
clearly passionate.
thoughts. Yeah. But there's an interesting comment from Ninoti because I've seen some of them when I use certain stretches. A brief, for example, around what's that police station called? Ayimensa police station. You'll notice that whether you're heading to the Kaswa area or you're going to the other end of town, some of these booths have been damaged in a way. Yes. You remember there was even one, I think the Tema one, where a vehicle rammed into it. So if we're going back, what does that mean in terms of reconstruction? We have another caller.
Well, we have another caller. Please, when you call, make your comments as brief as possible so we can take others. Martin is joining us from WA. Hello, Martin. Let's hear you. Hello, Martin. Well, it appears Martin cannot hear me. Martin.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Let's hear you, please.
Hello.
Martin, we can hear you. Just go ahead with your thoughts. You are our final caller.
Well, too bad. It appears there was a challenge with the line, unfortunately. So you were talking about what Ninote's concerns were about most of the booths being damaged, and they would spend huge money renovating or putting them back in shape. He says Ghana is a movie.
I agree with him.
Ghana is a movie. It's one.
In so many ways, it looks like our country, and I'm not just talking about this administration. In so many ways, we are like a cantata, concert party.
Well, Ashes says that will be fine for more revenue, and that's what the finance minister was driving at when he was reading the budget. But like I said, the minority says, well, more revenue, but just, because there were concerns in times past, Benjamin, that the monies in the road fund were being used for other things. Yeah. And that's another challenge.
And our roads are in a terrible state.
Well, Benjamin, I don't know. I don't know what...
So do you agree with him now? Ghana is a movie? A bad movie, for that matter.
Well, let's hope we wake up and see a plot twist.
You see, sometimes I feel we don't face our realities. No, until you face the reality, you can't come out of it.
No, we are facing it, but Benjamin, I mean, sometimes I just like to be extremely optimistic. And I know that there are people,
optimism must be based on something.
I know, but I'm saying that, like, the movie, there can be a plot twist. Let's pray for that miracle. I mean, because as it is now, that's the only thing we can wish for, isn't it?
Well, this is how we draw the curtains on the show. This morning. It's been interesting and good one there from the Ring Road area. We'll see how that pans out. But from us to you, we wish you the best of the day. In fact, the best of the month as well. We've started the new month and hopefully your SIM doesn't get deactivated.
Yeah, right. So just do *400# and just be sure you're safe, all right? So we leave it you now in the hands of the News Desk team. Brace will be here to bring you all that's happening with current affairs and analysis. To stay.